Night falls in a way modern humans can hardly imagine. There are no city lights, no distant glow on the horizon, no faint hum of machines. Only a darkness so complete it presses against the skin, thick as smoke, swallowing color, shape, and certainty. In this ancient world, millions of years before the first story was whispered around a fire, night was not a peaceful pause but a shifting battlefield where survival balanced on the edge of silence. And in the middle of this darkness, long before sleep carried meaning or mystery, creatures closed their eyes and surrendered to something they could not understand. Something that made them still and slow and vulnerable. Something that left them defenseless in a world designed to erase anything careless enough to stop moving. To fall unconscious for hours each night was one of the strangest gambles life ever took. Imagine a small, trembling mammal hiding under thick ferns, its heartbeat hammering against its ribs. It knows, instinctively, that movement means life, alertness means life, sound means danger, and silence might mean survival. Yet eventually, something inside it pushes back harder than fear. A pull deeper than instinct, older than thought. Its eyelids droop, its muscles loosen, and it folds into the darkness, trusting that its body will wake again, if the world allows it. This was sleep before dreams were stories, before the mind decorated the night with symbols, before the concept of rest existed. It was a biological command, a surrender written in the deepest roots of life. And yet, in the darkness, uncertainty always lurked. What if predators approached? What if the night shifted? What if the silence broke? Every creature that slept risked disappearing from the world by sunrise. But somehow, sleep endured. It became one of the most universal behaviors in nature. Insects do it. Birds do it. Mammals do it. Even creatures without brains drift into their own versions of rest. Why? Why would evolution, so ruthless, shape a world where shutting down consciousness was not only allowed but required? To explore that question, we must stand at the edge of this prehistoric night. We must step into the darkness with the small creatures listening for danger, with the primates hiding in trees, with early humans huddled near a fire they barely knew how to control. Because, for them, night was not half the day, it was half the struggle. And sleep was the most baffling leap of faith life ever demanded. Picture the earliest human ancestors, hair bristling, eyes adjusting to the dusk, ears tuned to the rustlings around them. Their day ended not with a choice but with an inevitability. As the sky dimmed, the world changed texture. Temperature dropped. Predators grew bolder. The safe hours shrank like a puddle under the desert sun. These ancestors had no language for tired, no concept of dream, no awareness of cycles. But their bodies understood something their minds could not. To stay alive for many tomorrows, they had to surrender tonight. The darkness was not empty. It shimmered with the movements of hyenas, the breathing of saber-toothed cats, the wing beats of giant nocturnal birds. Every sound carried weight. Every shift in the grass whispered a question: will you still be here when the sun returns? Against this backdrop, sleep formed a strange contrast. A calm center within a storm of fear. A biological rhythm beating softly under the noise of survival. Night after night, life paused itself, trusting nature to guard what it had built. As the night deepens, imagine the countless generations of early creatures struggling against the pull of exhaustion. Some fought it. Some resisted until their bodies overpowered their fear. Some rested in short bursts, moments stolen between threats. Others collapsed into deeper, longer spans of unconsciousness, their survival depending entirely on shadows concealing them. And each species passed down what worked best. Some evolved shallow, fragmented sleep. Others developed deep, complex cycles. A few learned to sleep with half their brain awake. Whatever kept them alive became part of their design. But one thing never changed: the night belonged to those who remained alert. The awake ones. The watchers. Humans, though still far from understanding their own minds, gradually sensed the value of vigilance. A few individuals, naturally restless, light sleepers, attuned to distant sounds, became the anchors of the night. They stayed awake when others drifted off. They heard the branches snap in the distance, sensed the air shifting, saw the faint glint of movement under moonlight. Their wakefulness saved countless lives. And as these guardians shaped their communities, sleep itself began to change, not only biologically but socially. It transformed from an isolated vulnerability into something protected, shared, and eventually ritualized. Yet the question still lingers, even for modern science: what was the purpose of all this? Why did nature build a system where consciousness must vanish regularly? Why would evolution risk the entire lineage of life over something seemingly fragile? To find the answer, we must continue down this ancient path. We must look not only at the external threats, the predators, the darkness, the instability, but also at the internal ones. At the mind that began to grow, to adapt, to dream. At the brain whose complexity demanded cycles of cleansing, memory weaving, emotional resetting. Sleep was not a mistake of evolution. It was its foundation. And so this story begins in the pitch-black world where sleep was merely survival's shadow. A force that shaped creatures long before they could name it. A cycle that nature protected because it was essential, even when it made life vulnerable. Before humans painted dreams on cave walls, before they built shelters, before they tamed fire, they already belonged to the night. And the night, in turn, shaped everything about who they would become. This is the story of that secret purpose. Of how sleep, silent, invisible, ancient, helped life endure the darkness. And how the Nightwatchers, through courage and instinct, ensured that morning always arrived. Night did not simply arrive in the prehistoric world, it descended like a living force. It was a presence that altered every sound, every movement, every instinct. To modern humans, nighttime is a gentle transition, softened by lamps, screens, and a sense of safety. But for early creatures, the sunset marked the beginning of hours governed by different rules, harsher rules. The day belonged to the gatherers, the grazers, the small mammals that scurried through foliage. The night, however, belonged entirely to predators. It was their arena, a world sculpted for their senses, sharper hearing, keener smell, the ability to see shapes where others saw only solid blackness. When darkness ruled the land, survival became a delicate negotiation with fear. Imagine the moment the last streak of sun dipped below the trees. The forest, which just moments earlier felt warm and alive, now became a labyrinth of indistinguishable shapes and uncertain spaces. The air cooled. Wind shifted. Shadows deepened until they merged into one unbroken darkness. For herbivores and early human ancestors, this was a time to withdraw, into burrows, into trees, into caves or makeshift shelters. For predators, it was a time to rise. Eyes opened in silence. Muscles tensed. Instincts sharpened. The world slowed for some and sped up for others. Hyenas were among the earliest and most feared rulers of the dark. Not the spotted hyenas we know today, but their ancient ancestors, creatures with bone-crushing jaws and senses finely tuned to nighttime opportunity. They moved with eerie efficiency, sniffing out the faintest scent of weakness. Early hominins learned to recognize the sound of their padded footsteps. A distant laugh-like call was a warning, something nearby had fallen or was about to. Fear traveled through the night air long before any visible threat emerged. Saber-toothed cats, enormous and silent, patrolled open plains like ghosts in the moonlight. Their long fangs were tools built for ambush. They didn't roar their arrival, they whispered it with barely perceptible motions, stalking the edges of sleeping groups. Every creature knew that to close its eyes was to risk never opening them again. Even the skies were not entirely safe. Giant nocturnal birds, their wings sweeping soundlessly, hunted from above. Early primates sleeping in trees felt the air shift when a predator passed overhead. A single flutter could send an entire treeful of creatures into trembling stillness. This was the world in which sleep evolved, a world where every night was a test. Vulnerability was not a small disadvantage, it was an invitation to vanish. And yet, life continued to sleep. It had to. Every organism that tried to resist sleep entirely collapsed from exhaustion, becoming even easier prey. Those who slept in unpredictable intervals, or who hid better, or who evolved lighter forms of sleep, survived. Survival shaped how they rested. But the night shaped who they were. For early humans and their ancestors, nighttime routines were dictated by danger. They chose sleeping locations not for comfort but for invisibility. High branches, caves with narrow entrances, clusters of thorny bushes, they relied on obstacles to delay predators, buying precious seconds. Families and small bands gathered tightly together, forming layers of protection with bodies and sound. When one shifted, others stirred. When a twig snapped outside, dozens of eyes opened instantly. Sleep was never truly deep, it was cautious, fragmented, always listening. This shared vulnerability created the first sparks of cooperative behavior. Groups began to depend on one another in new ways. Those who slept too deeply needed lighter sleepers nearby. Those who fatigued early relied on others to keep watch. Slowly, unintentionally, the roots of social bonding deepened. Fear created community. Darkness shaped cooperation. Predators, on the other hand, thrived within this system. Their strength wasn't only in physical power but in timing. They knew how to wait for the moment when movement stilled. They knew the rhythm of prey, fear, calm, hesitation, then drifting unconscious. Many predators learned to track these cycles with precision. They attacked not at sunset, when prey was alert, but hours later, when exhaustion made them still and unresponsive. The night became a carefully choreographed dance of silence and timing. To an ancient human ancestor curled inside a cave, sleep was not restful. It was a negotiation. Their ears never stopped working. Their bodies remained half-tensed. And the darkness around them felt alive with intentions. While the fear of nighttime predators shaped their behavior, it also shaped their minds. Long before humans invented stories, they imagined threats in the dark. Long before mythology named monsters, the night created them in heartbeats and reactions. This fear also pushed humans toward innovation. The earliest sparks of fire were not used first for cooking, they were used for protection. Even before early humans fully understood flames, they realized predators avoided it. A flicker of light meant a buffer. A small circle of safety carved out of endless blackness. But this innovation was still far away during the early ages of sleep evolution. For millions of years, creatures managed without fire, relying on instinct and environment alone. And in that long stretch of history, the nighttime shaped more than behavior, it shaped biology. Species with sharper hearing survived better. Those who could detect the faintest rustle reproduced more. Those who fell into dangerously deep sleep without guards were wiped out. This relentless pressure sculpted the sleeping mind. A part of the brain remained active, monitoring sound, regulating breathing, ready to snap awake. Evolution turned sleep into both a necessity and a strategy. So, when darkness ruled and predators prowled unseen, sleep continued to be one of nature's strangest paradoxes, a state that made creatures vulnerable yet somehow strengthened their survival. The night, in all its danger, forced life to adapt in extraordinary ways. And within this harsh evolutionary crucible, the earliest hints of human cooperation, community, and vigilance began to form. The darkness was a teacher, one that shaped not just how humans slept, but who they would become. Long before mammals curled up in nests or humans gathered around fires, the earliest reptiles drifted into primitive forms of sleep. These ancient creatures lived in a world much older and harsher, where survival centered on instinct rather than thought. Their nights were simple, no dreams, no emotions, no stories, just biological rhythms acting without consciousness. Yet these early sleepers marked one of the most important transitions in the history of life, the birth of rest as a structured behavior. They were the first beings to follow internal cycles that dictated when to pause and when to act, even though they had no awareness of what pause meant. Imagine an ancient reptile resting on a warm patch of stone after sunset. As light faded, the temperature dropped rapidly. With colder air came slower reactions, stiller bodies, and quieter movements. Reptiles depended on external warmth to energize their muscles, so nighttime naturally pushed them toward inactivity. Their stillness wasn't sleep in the way mammals experience it, it was deep rest shaped by the world around them. But inside their primitive brains, something new was forming, patterns of reduced brain activity, cycles of alertness and quiet, foundations of what would eventually become true sleep. They didn't dream, their minds lacked the structures needed for imagination or narrative. But this early rest served a purpose that evolution quickly reinforced. It saved energy. It preserved strength. It allowed damaged cells to recover. These small advantages meant survival in a world where every calorie mattered and every moment could bring danger. Over millions of years, the reptiles that rested efficiently, those whose bodies learned to recharge during the night, outlived those that didn't. Nature took note. Rest became a biological rule. This ancient blueprint set the stage for something extraordinary. When the first small mammals appeared, frail, warm-blooded, constantly burning energy to keep their bodies warm, they inherited a system built on reptilian rest. But they needed something more sophisticated. Their brains were beginning to grow in complexity. They were forming memories, solving small problems, recognizing patterns. These new mental abilities required maintenance, organization, and restoration. And so sleep began to evolve beyond simple stillness. Mammalian ancestors developed deeper, more structured phases, periods of slow-wave rest and bursts of brain activity that hinted at dreams. But in those early days, the line between sleep and wakefulness was thin. A rustle in the leaves could snap a reptile awake instantly, silence could lull it back into rest. Their rest cycles were shaped entirely by survival, not by comfort or habit. And in this fragile gap between awareness and vulnerability, evolution began experimenting with something remarkable: early neural simulations. Scientists believe that reptiles, though incapable of dreaming as we do, experienced primitive bursts of neural activity during rest. These pulses weren't stories or symbols, they didn't create images or memories. But they may have been early attempts by the brain to rehearse or stabilize internal patterns. The seeds of dreaming were being planted, faint and silent. The shift from reptile-like rest to mammalian sleep happened gradually. Each adaptation was a response to growing mental complexity. Bigger brains brought new challenges. Memories had to be filtered, experiences sorted, emotional responses regulated. Sleep was the solution. As prehistoric mammals adapted to nighttime threats with heightened senses and deeper social bonds, sleep became a structured sanctuary allowing their expanding brains to remain functional. Dreaming came later, a side effect, or perhaps a gift, of minds developing enough complexity to imagine. But even in their simplicity, the earliest reptiles had unknowingly started a chain reaction. Their cooling bodies, their instinctive stillness, their quiet response to darkness, all of these behaviors helped shape the foundations of the sleep cycles humans experience today. They were the first to obey internal clocks tied to the rising and setting of the sun. The first to conserve energy through predictable rhythms. The first to surrender part of their awareness to something bigger than fear. Reptiles didn't need dreams to survive their nights. They needed efficiency. But their basic rest patterns allowed mammals to later inherit the structure required for deep sleep. And mammals, who would one day become primates, then humans, would eventually transform this simple biological cycle into something far more complex and mysterious. Consider for a moment the quiet reptile resting under ancient starlight. It has no comprehension of its place in history, no awareness of the evolutionary story it is beginning. It doesn't know that its stillness, its lowered metabolism, its brief dips into unconsciousness will one day evolve into dream worlds, myths, visions, and philosophies. Yet in that small, unremarkable breathing shape lies the root of every dream humans will ever have. This is where the lineage of sleep begins, not with humans asking why they dream, not with mammals curling into warm nests, but with cold-blooded creatures following instinct into the night. It was simple. It was vulnerable. It was quiet. But it was enough to spark a chain of adaptations that would shape every species that followed. And so the story of sleep begins not with imagination, but with silence. Not with dreams, but with stillness. The first dreamers did not dream, but they created the biological pathway that allowed dreaming to exist. Their simplicity made space for complexity. Their stillness carved room for consciousness. And their ancient rest set the stage for the creatures who would one day close their eyes, not just to survive the night, but to explore worlds that existed only in the mind. In the shadow of the great reptiles, long before humans walked the earth, small mammals lived in a constant state of trembling alertness. They were fragile creatures, fur-covered, warm-blooded, endlessly hungry, always moving to keep their temperature steady. Their size made them nimble, but it also made them prey. The world around them belonged to giants, from towering dinosaurs to swift, sharp-eyed predators. Yet somehow, in this landscape shaped for creatures far larger and stronger, these tiny mammals found ways to survive each night. And it was within these long, perilous nights that their relationship with sleep became something entirely different from that of their reptilian ancestors. Imagine a tiny early mammal, a shrew-like creature no bigger than your hand, scurrying into the mouth of its burrow. The sun has just slipped below the horizon, and the air begins to cool quickly. A chill spreads through the ferns and mosses, through the exposed roots and fallen logs. The small creature knows instinctively that the open forest floor is no place to be after dark. Every sound carries a threat. Every patch of darkness hides eyes watching for motion. So it darts quickly, slipping beneath the soil into a tunnel it dug earlier, lined with bits of leaf and fur. Inside, the burrow is cramped but safe, at least safer than the world outside. These early mammals were among the first creatures to use architecture, not in the way humans later would with huts or houses, but in the most basic sense. They shaped their environment for protection. Their burrows were strategic. Underground, temperature remained more stable. Sound carried differently. Predators' footsteps were easier to detect. Threats approached from only one direction. Within these cramped tunnels, mammals found the first safe spaces where sleep could deepen, not fully, not peacefully, but enough to create the earliest versions of modern sleep cycles. Their nights were not calm. Even inside their burrows, their bodies did not fully relax. Their ears twitched at every vibration. Their whiskers quivered at faint movements in the soil. Their hearts beat fast even as their breathing slowed. This was a new kind of rest, lighter, more reactive, tuned for danger. Unlike reptiles whose rest was tied to temperature, mammals carried internal heat. Their bodies could remain ready, their muscles warm enough to spring into action. This meant their sleep needed to adapt. It became fragmented, in sharp bursts, shaped by small windows of opportunity rather than long stretches of stillness. But deeper sleep began to appear too. For the first time in evolution, there were moments when parts of the brain slipped into slow-wave cycles, periods where energy was restored, memory structures reinforced, and tiny fragments of experience sorted. These early mammals were beginning to develop minds that needed maintenance. Their survival didn't depend only on instinct but on learning, recognizing patterns, remembering paths, knowing the difference between predator sounds and harmless movements. Sleep became a tool as much as a vulnerability. Every night, their world was a balance between exhaustion and alertness. A full day of constant foraging, escaping predators, and searching for mates burned enormous amounts of energy. Their warm-blooded bodies demanded nourishment and rest in equal measure. Without sleep, they became clumsy and slow, easy prey. Without caution, they became victims of the night. So they slept in brief cycles, rising often to sniff the air, recheck the entrance, ensure the world had not changed while they rested. Above ground, danger patrolled silently. Troodonted dinosaurs, small, intelligent predators with sharp senses, moved through the underbrush at night. Their eyes reflected even the faintest moonlight. Their steps were soft as dust. A single mistake could mean the end for any small mammal caught outside. That is why early mammals began choosing their sleep locations with increasing sophistication. Some dug deeper tunnels. Others built multi-chamber burrows. Still others retreated into trees or hidden crevices. Each adaptation carved sleep into a safer, more protected practice. Over millions of years, as dinosaurs dominated the surface, small mammals lived in these pockets of shadow and silence. Their nights were defined by careful listening and quick retreats. But something extraordinary was happening inside their tiny brains. Sleep was reshaping itself. There were moments, fleeting, fragile, where bursts of neural activity lit up regions of the brain responsible for processing sound or recalling danger. These early flashes were not dreams as we know them, but they hinted at internal experiences growing more complex. The more mammals depended on learning for survival, the more sleep adapted to support it. Species that could remember where they hid food, or which tunnels led to safer exits, or what specific predator calls meant, lived longer. Their offspring inherited stronger brain structures and more refined sleep patterns. The world was slowly selecting for creatures capable of using sleep as a weapon, not against predators directly, but against helplessness. Sleep became the invisible ally that sharpened survival. These early mammals also had something their reptile ancestors lacked: social tendencies. Some shared burrows. Mothers cared for their young with warmth rather than abandoning them. This created pockets of communal safety, small clusters of furred bodies pressed together deep underground, sharing heat, sharing breath, sharing fear. In these groups, sleep began to take on a cooperative structure. One mammal might stir, another twitch awake, alerting the others without even knowing why. Light sleepers benefited the heavy sleepers. Heavy sleepers pushed deeper cycles that helped develop sharper minds. The roots of human nighttime behavior were being planted right there in those dark tunnels. Every rustle outside the burrow, every distant predator call, every cold gust of air shaped their patterns. Their sleep was never peaceful, not the way humans imagine rest, but it was effective. It kept them fast enough to flee, sharp enough to outthink smaller predators, and resilient enough to recover after long days. And slowly, these fragile creatures, overlooked in the towering shadows of dinosaurs, began building the neurological foundation of future humans. The burrow was more than shelter, it was an evolutionary cradle. Inside its darkness, early mammals were doing something extraordinary, transforming sleep from simple rest into a complex, vital process that would one day allow imagination, problem-solving, memory, and dreams. From these tiny, trembling bodies hiding in the soil came the first murmurs of the human mind. The perilous nights of small mammals reshaped the purpose of sleep, turning vulnerability into a survival strategy. And without these ancestors, we would never have developed the capacity to dream, to learn, or to understand the world beyond instinct. Their nights were dangerous. Their sleep was fragile. But from that fragility came the beginnings of everything that would one day make humans human. For millions of years, night was an uncontested ruler. Darkness determined when creatures hid, when they rested, and how they slept. But then something happened, quietly, almost accidentally, that would divide the history of sleep into two eras, the world before fire, and the world after. When early humans first learned to control flames, they did more than discover warmth or a way to cook food. They created the first artificial sun, a fragile circle of light around which the world's dangers hesitated. And in that soft glow, sleep changed forever. Picture a group of early humans, hominins who were just beginning to understand cooperation, gathered around a flickering fire. The flames crackle softly, pushing shadows back with elegant, dancing shapes. Sparks rise into the night like glowing insects, disappearing into the dark canopy overhead. For the first time in evolutionary history, these humans are not completely swallowed by the night. They have carved out a safe zone, a small protected island in an ocean of darkness. Before fire, humans slept like all vulnerable creatures, hidden, silent, tense. Every rustle outside their shelter triggered an instant surge of fear. Sleep was shallow, fragmented, and constantly interrupted. But fire offered something no other animal possessed, a way to manipulate the night. Predators, especially those with sensitive eyes, naturally avoided flames. Even the scent of smoke acted as a deterrent. This meant humans could finally sleep with a distance between them and danger, not merely a thin barrier of instinct. For the first time, there was space for deeper sleep. This shift didn't happen all at once. Early fires were unstable, accidental, stolen from lightning-scorched trees. Humans did not yet know how to keep them alive. But when they discovered the branching patterns of wood, the dry leaves that caught easily, the logs that smoldered for hours, they began building longer-lasting flames. They learned the rhythms of feeding fire the same way they learned the rhythms of gathering food. And with this new mastery came a subtle but profound change in nightly behavior. Instead of retreating immediately after sunset, humans lingered. They talked in low voices, their faces illuminated in amber light. They groomed one another, prepared tools for the next day, shared food scraps, and watched the flames. This was the birth of nighttime culture. These moments shaped not only sleep but also communication, memory, and bonding. Fire slowed the night. It stretched time. And humans, now sheltered by this glowing shield, slept in cycles that were slightly longer, slightly deeper, slightly more restorative. But fire introduced more than safety, it introduced hierarchy and responsibility. Someone had to tend the flames. If the fire died, the group was blind and vulnerable again. This responsibility naturally shifted toward those who were inclined to stay awake longer, light sleepers, night-oriented individuals, those who were restless when others grew tired. These early watchers were the first guardians of the fire. They didn't yet have the title of Nightwatchers, but they performed the same essential duty, maintaining a structure that allowed others to sleep. Fire also changed the landscape of fear. Before, the environment dictated how and where humans slept. After fire, humans began choosing sleep sites based on where they could build flames safely, near caves, under rock overhangs, in open clearings with room to monitor predators. Fire drew communities into tighter circles, fostering cooperation and shared protection. Sleep became a social activity rather than an isolated one. This shift had enormous evolutionary consequences. In shared sleeping spaces, humans developed synchronized rhythms, aligning breathing, body temperature, and even hormone cycles. Trust deepened. Bonds strengthened. And where trust flourished, so did vulnerability. Humans began allowing themselves to sink into deeper phases of sleep, phases that had been nearly impossible before. Their brains entered long, uninterrupted slow-wave cycles. Their bodies repaired more efficiently. Their minds processed memories with greater clarity. Dreaming grew more vivid, more structured. The mere presence of fire changed the architecture of the human brain. Outside the circle of light, predators still moved. Their eyes gleamed beyond the boundary, cautious but curious. The fire created a divide. Inside was safety, light, warmth, and community. Outside was danger, hunger, cold, and darkness. This divide shaped human psychology. The glowing center became associated with comfort and belonging, while the shadows beyond became symbols of the unknown. Humans learned to interpret that unknown not just with instinct, but with imagination. And imagination, fueled by deeper sleep, began to bloom into stories, symbols, and eventually myths. Fire also extended the waking hours. Humans could now observe the night, study the stars, sense the movements of nocturnal creatures, and learn the patterns of darkness. This awareness shaped the earliest understanding of the natural world. It encouraged curiosity. It weakened fear. And it gave humans something no other creature possessed: control over when and how they slept. Yet fire demanded balance. It was both a guardian and a responsibility. If flames flared too brightly, they attracted attention. If they died too soon, the group was left exposed. These fragile boundaries forced humans to coordinate more effectively. Nighttime schedules emerged. Some slept earlier, some later. The concept of shifts was born, no longer imposed purely by instinct, but chosen, negotiated, understood. Within this new structure, sleep became more than a biological necessity. It became a shared experience. It deepened emotional connections. It allowed human ancestors to recover enough energy to hunt better, craft tools, and raise young more effectively. Fire gave them the advantage of time to grow, time to think, time to evolve. Without fire, human sleep would have remained shallow, fragmented, and limited by fear. With fire, sleep became a foundation of human advancement. It strengthened memory, sharpened cognition, and expanded creativity. The light that danced on their faces at night was the same light that awakened their minds. In that soft glow, humans stepped out of the strict rule of darkness. They didn't conquer the night, but they negotiated with it. They carved out a fragile, precious piece of safety where thoughts could bloom and dreams could deepen. Fire didn't just reshape how humans slept, it reshaped who humans would become. Long before written history, before tribes crafted stories or carved symbols onto stone, early human groups began to recognize a simple truth: not everyone slept the same way. Some individuals drifted into deep rest quickly, their bodies surrendering to exhaustion as soon as darkness fell. Others lay awake, their minds alert, listening to distant sounds carried by the night wind. These differences were not mistakes in biology, they were ancient gifts. Out of these natural variations, the first Nightwatchers emerged. Imagine a small band of early humans gathered around the dying warmth of a fire. Most are curled up, eyes closed, breathing steady. But 2 or 3 remain awake, shifting quietly, listening. Their eyes catch the faintest movements beyond the boundary of the fire's glow. Their ears pick up rustles in the grass, the soft crunch of a predator's footstep, the flutter of a nocturnal bird's wings. Their bodies refuse to sleep early, not because of fear, but because something inside them is wired differently. They are alert while others dream. These Nightwatchers are not assigned, they are discovered. Their wakefulness appears naturally, night after night. Others in the group begin to rely on them. A light sleeper might wake at the slightest sound, whispering to a Nightwatcher for confirmation that all is safe. A mother with an infant might curl closer to the warmth, trusting that someone nearby remains vigilant. Over time, this spontaneous behavior evolves into an unspoken social structure built on mutual dependence. In the ancient world, danger did not arrive with warning. A predator attack could happen in total silence. And so the Nightwatchers became the first line of defense. They were the ones who heard the low growl before anyone else, who sensed when the wind carried the scent of a predator, who noticed when the fire dimmed too much. When they nudged others awake, it was never questioned. Instinct taught the group to trust the ones who stayed conscious when everyone else slept. But the role of Nightwatcher came with risk. While others rested and regained energy, they remained alert, often sacrificing their own sleep. Their minds hovered between wakefulness and exhaustion. They learned to take short, sharp naps, seconds or minutes long, relying on micro-rests to maintain vigilance. Their bodies adapted to irregular rhythms. Their instincts sharpened beyond ordinary sensitivity. In them, the roots of modern chronotypes were forming: early risers, light sleepers, night owls, each shaped by ancient necessity. Within a tribe, Nightwatchers developed heightened awareness. They knew which sounds meant danger and which meant nothing. They learned to interpret the nighttime movements of the forest or savanna, the rustle of leaves, the chitter of insects, the whisper of branches. They recognized predator patterns, when hyenas roamed closest, when big cats hunted, when snakes warmed themselves under moonlight. Their knowledge of the night became a form of quiet expertise, passed from one watchful generation to the next. In return, the group treated them differently. Not with authority, but with trust. Their value was woven subtly into the fabric of survival. Nightwatchers helped create a system of sleep that no other species shared, cooperative rest. Lions slept in clusters but relied on strength. Wolves slept together but used proximity. Humans, however, used roles, an organized rhythm of who rests deeply and who stays partially awake. This was the beginning of social timekeeping, the silent agreement that someone would always be vigilant. Nightwatchers also shaped the emotional life of early humans. Sitting next to the fire's glow, listening to the night, they experienced moments of solitude unknown to the rest of the group. They were the ones who noticed the stars shifting overhead, who watched the embers pulse like breathing organisms, who learned the nighttime languages of the world. In these quiet hours, a new element of humanity emerged: reflection. Thought without distraction. Awareness without movement. The first seeds of introspection may have come not in the chaos of day, but in the silence of night, kept alive by those who could not sleep. Yet this role came at a cost. Fatigue followed them constantly. Their deep sleep was shorter, their dreams fragmented. They operated in a state of perpetual half-rest. But nature rewarded them in unexpected ways. Their instincts grew sharper. Their bodies adapted to quicker recovery during brief rest. Their minds became attuned to patterns others missed. Over time, genes that supported different sleep schedules spread throughout human populations, ensuring that every group always had someone who naturally stayed awake later or woke earlier. These biological differences became the backbone of early survival strategies. Groups with Nightwatchers survived attacks more often. Their fire burned longer. Their children were safer. Their sleep, though vulnerable, became more secure because it was shared and protected. Nightwatchers were not warriors or leaders, they were the quiet guardians who turned the night from a predator's domain into a manageable threat. The rise of Nightwatchers marked a turning point in human evolution. For the first time, sleep was not just an individual biological function, it became a collective system. The division of labor in darkness helped stabilize group life, strengthen cooperation, and deepen trust among individuals. Humanity's complex social bonds, which would eventually give rise to culture and civilization, took root in moments like these, moments when a few chosen by nature stayed awake to watch the darkness, ensuring that morning always arrived safely. The legacy of those early Nightwatchers lives on today. In every person who stays up late while others sleep, in light sleepers who wake to the faintest sound, in early risers who greet sunrise with energy, ancient rhythms still echo. These differences, once essential for survival, remain imprinted in our biology. And though our modern world no longer requires us to guard tribes from predators, the instincts of the Nightwatchers continue, tied to a history written in firelight and shadow. Long before humans understood time, before clocks or calendars or even spoken language, their bodies carried a rhythm older than memory itself. This rhythm, etched into the cells, whispered through hormones, rising and falling with each passing day, guided when they felt alert, when they grew tired, and when their minds drifted toward sleep. These internal cycles, known today as circadian rhythms, shaped not only how early humans lived, but how they survived the darkness. And within these silent, invisible rhythms, the genetics of night vigilance began to emerge. Imagine an ancient landscape illuminated only by the moon and the distant stars. Its pale glow reveals faint outlines of trees, rocks, and wandering animals. To most members of the tribe, this dim light signals the approach of sleep. Their bodies release hormones that slow their thoughts, relax their muscles, and guide them into slumber. But not everyone responds this way. For a few individuals, the moonlight sharpens their senses instead of soothing them. They become more awake, more aware, more attuned to the small sounds of the night. These are the moonlit sentinels, the early humans whose internal clocks ran differently from the rest. This difference wasn't a coincidence. Biology was experimenting. Millions of years of evolution had already shown that diversity in sleep patterns increased a species' survival chances. A group where everyone slept deeply at the same time was dangerously vulnerable. But a group with mixed rhythms, some who naturally stayed awake longer, others who rose before dawn, had a constant line of defense. These differing patterns were not choices but genetic variations, subtle shifts in the way hormones like melatonin and cortisol cycled through the body. Those who were naturally inclined to wake later at night, or sleep later into the morning, became essential for protecting the group. Their alertness filled the gaps left by early sleepers. Their biology supported their role. Their eyes adjusted more easily to low light. Their hearing remained sharp. Their brains resisted fatigue longer during late hours. Long before humans crafted tools or weapons to defend themselves, they relied on the invisible guidance of their circadian rhythms. Moonlight itself played a quiet but important role. It changed the landscape at night, transforming total darkness into a world shaped by silver shadows. Certain nights, the full moon especially, extended visibility for miles. Predators attacked more often under bright moonlight, using the glow to hunt. And early humans learned to anticipate this. Those with genetic tendencies toward night vigilance were more active and alert during such nights, instinctively protecting their sleeping companions. Over thousands of generations, these patterns became embedded into the human population. Variations in genes responsible for the timing of sleep and wake cycles spread through communities. The result was not uniformity but diversity. Some people became naturally attuned to dusk, growing more energetic as the day ended. Others became early risers, waking long before sunrise to scout for danger or prepare for the day. This spread created a rotating system of vigilance without anyone planning it. Inside each person, hormones orchestrated the rhythm. As evening approached, melatonin levels rose, urging the body toward rest. But in Nightwatchers and moonlit sentinels, this rise happened slowly or later than in others. Their internal clocks delayed the impulse to sleep, keeping them attentive during hours when predators prowled. Meanwhile, cortisol, associated with alertness, peaked earlier for some and later for others, creating natural shifts in wakefulness. This biological spread became one of the silent foundations of human safety. Without tools, without walls, without advanced shelters, early humans survived because they slept in patterns that complemented each other. The group became a living machine powered by instinct. Someone was always awake, someone always listening, someone always ready. Circadian rhythms also shaped emotional behavior during nighttime. Those awake under the moon felt a unique kind of solitude. They learned to navigate darkness by relying on senses other than sight, sound, smell, vibration. Their connection to the natural world deepened. They began recognizing the patterns of night animals, when owls called, when insects quieted, when larger predators moved closer. These individuals developed a knowledge of nighttime ecosystems that others in the tribe never experienced. Their wakefulness gave rise to new kinds of thinking. In the quiet hours, when most of the tribe slept, Nightwatchers contemplated the world around them. Their minds wandered. They analyzed sounds, studied the patterns of stars, and tried to predict the movements of animals. This nighttime cognition, slow, reflective, intuitive, planted early seeds of imagination and awareness. At the same time, early risers performed another essential role. Before the light touched the horizon, they were already awake, scanning the surroundings, preparing for gathering or hunting, and assessing whether predators still lingered nearby. Their rhythms closed the gap left by the Nightwatchers, completing the cycle of constant vigilance. If you look at modern humans today, these ancient genetic divisions still echo strongly. Some people naturally stay awake late into the night, creative, alert, thoughtful in the quiet hours. Others wake early, energetic, focused, ready to act. Many fall somewhere between these extremes. These chronotypes are not mere habits, they are the deeply rooted inheritance from ancestors who survived by being awake when others slept. Circadian rhythms, moon cycles, and genetic variation all fused to create a survival system that required no formal planning. It was nature's way of ensuring that humanity had eyes on the darkness at every hour. It was an evolutionary partnership between biology and the night sky. The moonlit sentinels helped shape the structure of sleep that humans carry to this day. They were not warriors, not leaders, not even consciously chosen protectors. They were simply individuals whose bodies responded differently to the day and night cycle. Yet in their wakefulness, they protected entire communities, allowing deeper sleep, safer rest, and more complex dreams to flourish among others. Their silent vigilance under the moonlight was one of the earliest forms of cooperation, a biological harmony that helped humanity survive the world long before it understood the forces shaping it. In the prehistoric world, the night was not just a backdrop, it was a hunting ground carved from silence and instinct. When the sun disappeared, the rules of survival shifted completely. Creatures that were timid during the daylight transformed into silent, efficient killers. Early humans and their ancestors learned quickly that the darkness belonged to predators whose senses excelled when light vanished. To sleep unguarded in such a world was not merely risky, it was often fatal. Picture the African plains millions of years ago. The air cools sharply after sunset, grasses stiffen with dew, and the familiar colors of the daytime landscape dissolve into a murky gradient where shapes lose their meaning. In this environment, predators thrived. Hyenas, ancient, far more robust and aggressive than their modern relatives, moved in coordinated groups, sniffing for recent kills or weak animals. Their powerful jaws, capable of crushing bone, made them some of the most feared hunters of the night. Even their laughter-like calls drifting across the plains served as psychological warfare, announcing their presence long before they arrived. To the early hominins listening from their makeshift shelters, that sound meant one thing: stay awake, stay alert, stay alive. But hyenas were not the only threat. Saber-toothed cats lurked at the edges of visibility, their massive fangs purpose-built for precision killing. These cats did not roar or announce themselves, they approached like ghosts. Their padded feet left no sound. Their breath blended into the wind. They preferred ambush, attacking creatures that moved too slowly or slept too deeply. A single mistake, a moment of slow reaction, meant the end. Even the trees offered no guarantee of safety. Giant predatory birds, their talons curved like hooked knives, patrolled the canopy at night. They were capable of lifting small mammals straight out of branches. Early primates who slept in trees had to develop exquisite balance and constant micro-alertness, waking at the slightest shaking of a limb. Sleep was always conditional, always fragile, always balanced against the world's relentless hunger. These predators shaped the evolution of sleep in ways that still echo through human biology. When early humans slept lightly, it wasn't a flaw, it was survival strategy. Light sleepers became essential to group safety, reacting quickly to distant rustles, shifting shadows, or sudden silence in the environment. Deep sleep could only happen when others were awake to monitor the surroundings. This interdependence meant that the cost of sleeping too deeply at the wrong time was often death. There are fossil records showing ancient human ancestors with bite marks that match saber-toothed cats. Some skulls show signs of sudden attack, fatal blows delivered while the victims were not defending themselves. These remains serve as stark reminders that nighttime was a battleground. The failure to detect a predator even a few seconds early could wipe out an entire family line. Evolution responded by sculpting humans into creatures whose sleep is easily interrupted. Even today, the brain remains half alert to sound during the night, a remnant of those ancient threats. Consider the experience of a small group of early hominins sleeping under a rock shelter. Their fire has burned low, casting faint red light. One person hears something, a crunch of leaves, a low growl, a breath carried by the wind. Their eyes snap open. Adrenaline floods their body instantly. They nudge others awake. The group scrambles to add wood to the fire, make noise, throw stones into the darkness. This quick, coordinated response often made the difference between survival and tragedy. These nighttime battles also shaped social behavior. Groups that communicated well survived more often. Signals developed, whispers, clicks, soft vocalizations to warn others without drawing predator attention. This early form of nighttime language strengthened cooperation. Humans who slept alone rarely survived, humans who slept in groups did. Predators forced humanity into community long before culture evolved to value it. The presence of such dangerous nighttime hunters also encouraged early humans to explore new forms of shelter. While some slept in open plains, many sought natural fortifications, deep caves, narrow crevices, thorny bushes that deterred predators. Over thousands of years, this preference for protected sleep sites influenced migrations, settlement patterns, and even the eventual development of constructed shelters. Safety dictated where humans lived, and sleep dictated what safety meant. But the most profound impact predators had was on the internal architecture of sleep itself. Humans evolved a sleep structure divided into light stages and deep stages, allowing the body to restore energy while keeping the brain responsive. Slow-wave sleep, the deepest and most restorative phase, was likely experienced only in short bursts, timed carefully and protected by others. REM sleep, where dreams occur, emerged as a neurological strategy to process fear, rehearse responses, and strengthen memory. Even dreams may have origins in predator avoidance, helping the brain simulate danger before facing it in reality. The costs of unalert sleep continued shaping humanity long after the most dangerous prehistoric predators went extinct. The instincts they forged remain. A sudden noise at night still jolts modern humans upright, heart racing. Many people naturally wake multiple times without realizing it, a leftover behavior from ancestors who needed constant checks on their surroundings. Even anxiety around darkness traces its roots to these ancient threats. Predators taught humans that sleep could never be entirely safe. They taught vigilance, cooperation, adaptability. They taught early humans to divide the night into roles, to depend on each other, to sharpen their senses. Without the relentless pressure of nocturnal hunters, human sleep would be deeper but far less adaptive. It is precisely because the night was so dangerous that humans developed the cognitive and social tools needed to survive. These predators were not merely obstacles, they were sculptors of human evolution. They shaped the way humans sleep, think, and protect one another. Every nightwatcher who kept guard at the edge of the firelight, every mother who woke at a faint cry, every early sleeper and late sleeper, they were all part of an ancient system designed to keep humanity alive in a world where the darkness itself felt like a living enemy. And because of them, sleep today carries a hidden story, one written in footsteps, growls, and shadows, that began long before humans could understand the cost of closing their eyes. Long before humans painted symbols on cave walls or carved stories into memory, their minds were already creating worlds of their own, worlds that appeared only in sleep. Dreams, fragile and strange, emerged quietly in the evolution of early mammals and primates. At first glance, they might have seemed useless, nothing more than flickering images formed in the darkness of the mind. But nature does not waste energy on things without purpose. Over millions of years, dreams became a hidden weapon, one that shaped how early humans understood danger, solved problems, and prepared for the unpredictable world outside their shelters. Picture an ancient human ancestor curled inside a shallow cave. The night is quiet, the fire has burned low, and their breathing is slow and steady. Suddenly, behind their closed eyes, their brain ignites with bursts of activity. Images appear, blurry shapes, flashes of movement, echoes of fear. They see predators, cliffs, storms, shadows. These visions are not real, yet their body reacts as if they are. Their heart races. Muscles tighten. The mind rehearses the response to danger long before morning arrives. This was the evolutionary secret of dreams, a safe simulation of the threats that might come. In a world where hesitation meant death, any practice, no matter how imaginary, was valuable. Dreams allowed early humans to rehearse running, hiding, fighting, and escaping without the real-world consequences of failure. The brain learned from these simulations, sharpening instincts and increasing survival chances. Even infants, too young to understand the world, dreamt intensely, their growing minds building templates of movement and threat. Night after night, early humans refined their responses. A dream about a prowling cat trained them to stay alert to certain sounds. A dream about falling helped them navigate tree branches with more caution. A dream about a rival prepared them emotionally for conflict. These simulations strengthened neural pathways, creating a mental library of experience that grew even when reality offered little practice. But dreams were not only about fear. They also explored curiosity, creativity, and problem-solving. Early humans imagined solutions before they existed. They saw new paths, new strategies, new tools within the relative safety of unconsciousness. Sometimes, inspiration struck in sleep, a better way to track prey, a safer place to build shelter, a new pattern of movement that conserved energy. The mind wandered freely, unconstrained by the limits of waking logic. Even modern humans experience this ancient phenomenon. A problem unsolved during the day often finds its solution in the drifting edges of sleep. This ability, born millions of years ago, allowed early humans to innovate their survival strategies long before they had language to describe them. Dreams also helped early humans process emotions. Life in the prehistoric world was brutal. Fear was constant. Loss was common. Stress was unending. Dreams allowed the brain to revisit these intense feelings in symbolic ways, softening them, reorganizing them, offering a kind of psychological relief. The mind, overwhelmed by daylight challenges, used nighttime to restore emotional balance. Those who could regulate fear lasted longer. They made clearer decisions. They panicked less. Dreams became silent healers. As dreaming deepened, imagination evolved. Early humans began forming internal narratives. Symbols emerged, shapes, figures, patterns that carried meaning beyond the literal. These dream-born symbols later inspired myths, rituals, and early spiritual thought. Long before humans told stories around firelight, they were dreaming them. But the true power of dreams came from their unpredictability. No dream was the same. The mind combined fragments of memory with instinct, blending danger with imagination to create new scenarios. This unpredictability prepared early humans for a world that changed constantly. They learned flexibility, adaptability, and quick thinking. Dreams trained the brain to expect the unexpected. Nightwatchers often dreamt the least, their sleep fragmented by duty, but when they did dream, their visions were sharp and intense. Their role in guarding the tribe meant their minds rehearsed vigilance even in sleep. Heavy sleepers, protected by nightwatchers, often had the longest and most vivid dream cycles. The combination of both types strengthened the entire group. One side practiced alertness, the other creativity. As millennia passed, dreams began shaping culture. Some dreams were remembered after waking. Strange images lingered, messages from the night. Elders interpreted these visions, believing they were warnings or signs from unseen forces. Whether or not they were supernatural did not matter, dreams brought meaning. They connected individuals to mysteries larger than themselves. This early sense of symbolism helped humans develop storytelling, ritual, and shared identity. Yet beneath all the myth and wonder, dreams remained a biological tool, a training ground disguised as imagination. To evolution, dreams were practical. They improved reaction times. They mapped emotional pathways. They organized memory. They allowed early humans to experience danger without dying from it. This gave them an edge over predators, who lived solely in the present and learned only through real encounters. Humans, on the other hand, learned in two worlds, the waking world and the dreaming one. Every night, while the fire crackled softly and the Nightwatchers kept their silent vigil, the rest of the tribe entered a realm where instincts sharpened and lessons formed. In this intimate partnership between biology and imagination, survival became not just physical but mental. Dreams, once simple flashes of neural energy, transformed into one of the most powerful evolutionary tools humans ever received. They offered practice, healing, creativity, and meaning. And through them, the human mind stepped beyond the limits of physical experience into a world shaped by thought itself. In the darkness of ancient nights, the brain learned how to survive the day. For the early human Nightwatchers, the guardians of the darkness, sleep was never straightforward. Their role required a dangerous balancing act between staying alert and surviving the endless pull of exhaustion. Their sacrifice was silent, often unnoticed by their tribe, yet their fatigue carried consequences that shaped human evolution. In the prehistoric world, where predators roamed freely and a moment of vulnerability could erase entire families, the edges of sleep were as perilous as the predators themselves. Imagine a Nightwatcher sitting near the last embers of the fire. The night is deep, the air cold, and the silence thick with tension. Their eyes blink slowly, not entirely shutting, but dipping dangerously close to unconsciousness. Their heartbeat slows. Their breath deepens. Their head dips forward for a fraction of a second, and in that fragile sliver of time, they fall into a microsleep. A microsleep lasts less than a heartbeat. It is so brief that the person experiencing it doesn't even know it happened. But the mind, desperate for rest, seizes those tiny moments whenever it can. For Nightwatchers, these involuntary collapses of consciousness were the most treacherous part of their responsibility. A predator could cross several meters during that blink. A hyena could close the distance. A saber-toothed cat could strike. The danger wasn't simply exhaustion, it was the unpredictability of when the brain would force a momentary shutdown. The human brain evolved to protect itself from total collapse. When faced with extreme fatigue, it begins shutting down sections in tiny intervals. Vision blurs. Hearing dulls. Reaction times slow. In the dark, these weaknesses multiplied. Even a slight delay in recognizing danger could mean disaster. The early humans learned quickly that fatigue could be as deadly as any predator stalking them. To fend off this deadly tiredness, Nightwatchers developed instinctive coping strategies. Some chewed on bitter roots to stay awake. Others walked slow circles around the fire, using movement and cold air to keep their senses from shutting down. Some hummed quietly, grounding themselves in vibration and sound. These early tactics were not taught, they emerged naturally, shaped by necessity. The human mind began searching for ways to resist its own biology. But no method was perfect. The pull of sleep was stronger than willpower, stronger than fear, stronger than instinct. For those who regularly guarded their tribe, their physical health often deteriorated faster. Sleep deprivation weakened immune response, slowed wound healing, and impaired decision-making. In the harsh prehistoric world, where survival required constant strength and agility, these costs were dangerous. Nightwatchers carried these burdens alone. There were times when exhaustion overtook them entirely. A Nightwatcher might lean against a rock, eyes half open but unfocused, their consciousness drifting. In this trance-like state, the world blurred into shadows and distant shapes. Sound waves reached them, but the brain processed them as if underwater. Their muscles slackened. Their mind floated. This was the edge of death, the point where instinct battled fatigue and the outcome balanced on a razor-thin line. Other tribe members were not oblivious to the Nightwatcher struggle. Even though the concept of roles did not yet exist, early humans instinctively recognized patterns in one another. They saw which individuals tired fastest, who woke easily, who could keep their eyes open during the darkest hours. They learned to take turns, however loosely. Not everyone was suited for night vigilance. Some had brains wired to rise early, to function best before dawn. Others naturally fell asleep as soon as darkness arrived. These biological differences reduced the burden on any one person, but they did not eliminate the danger. Fatigue didn't just threaten survival, it shaped the structure of human sleep itself. Early humans who adapted to microrests or who could distribute sleep across fragmented intervals had a better chance of surviving nights filled with predators. Over many generations, these traits strengthened. Humans evolved a flexible sleep architecture unlike that of many other animals, one that allowed them to wake instantly, re-enter sleep quickly, and still gain benefits from short rest cycles. Dreams, too, were affected by fatigue. Deprived of deep sleep, Nightwatchers often experienced vivid hallucinations during the edge-of-sleep state. Shadows morphed into animals, and distant sounds transformed into imagined threats. These hallucinations could mislead the watcher or, paradoxically, sharpen their instincts. A false alarm could alert the group unnecessarily, but it also kept everyone on edge, reinforcing survival behavior. Microsleep sometimes saved lives in unexpected ways. A brief dip into unconsciousness allowed the brain to recharge just enough to snap back into full alertness moments later. That tiny burst of restored attention could be the difference between hearing a predator approach and remaining unaware. The brain, always negotiating with survival, used microsleeps as emergency repairs. Still, many Nightwatchers paid a heavy price. Chronic sleep loss made them more susceptible to accidents. They stumbled, misjudged distances, or reacted too slowly during hunts. Their cognitive performance suffered. Some fell ill more easily. The tribe, recognizing the danger in losing these essential guardians, began instinctively supporting them, sharing tasks, offering shorter night shifts, or adjusting responsibilities. This was the subtle beginning of cooperative care, a cornerstone of human social bonds. The fatigue of Nightwatchers influenced early human psychology as well. The fear of falling asleep at the wrong moment became embedded in memory and instinct. Even today, many people experience sudden jolts during sleep, the sensation of falling or being startled awake. These reactions may be remnants of an ancient biological alarm system designed to snap humans back from the brink of dangerous sleep. As dawn approached each day, the Nightwatchers felt the weight of survival ease. Morning light was salvation. It peeled back the shadows, revealing the world as it had survived the night. The Watchers, exhausted, finally allowed themselves to sleep deeply, often during the very hours when others were most active. Their rhythms evolved separately from the rest of the tribe, giving rise to chronotypes that still shape human sleep patterns today. The risks Nightwatchers faced weren't just moments of danger, they were constant battles with their own biology. They lived in the thin space between consciousness and collapse, guarding their people through the most vulnerable hours. Their fatigue reshaped human sleep, honed survival instincts, and deepened the bonds within early communities. Without these early guardians and their willingness, voluntary or instinctive, to stay awake at the edge of exhaustion, human evolution would have taken a very different path. Their sacrifices echo in every heartbeat that slows as we drift to sleep, in every instinct that wakes us at the slightest sound, and in every night where safety feels like something we can take for granted. Long before civilization, before villages or temples or carved symbols, early humans began shaping the night into something more than darkness and danger. The raw fear that once ruled the evening slowly softened. Fire had already changed the rhythm of nighttime life, but its glow sparked something deeper, patterns of behavior, shared moments, and early rituals that made sleep safer and more meaningful. What began as instinct gradually transformed into culture. Sleep was no longer just a necessity, it became a communal act, a moment of belonging, and eventually, a foundation of human identity. Imagine a small cluster of humans huddled around a fire in the deep ancient night. The flames crackle softly, sending warm light across the faces of adults, children, and elders. The group is tired from the day, hunting, gathering, climbing, walking long distances. But instead of collapsing immediately, they linger. They eat small portions of food, share pieces of fruit or cooked meat, and settle into relaxed positions. These small moments of calm were the earliest forms of nighttime rituals, unspoken, unplanned, but deeply significant. As bodies relaxed, voices lowered. Humans began humming, whispering, or making soft rhythmic sounds. These primitive vocalizations soothed infants, signaled comfort, and filled the silence with warmth rather than fear. Over generations, these quiet nighttime sounds developed into early lullabies. A mother rocking her child by firelight, humming gently, was not simply soothing the baby, she was creating the very first emotional bond tied to sleep. These melodies helped regulate breathing, calm anxieties, and build trust. Sleep rituals also emerged through touch. Early humans groomed each other, removing insects, smoothing hair, stroking arms or backs. This grooming served practical purposes, but its psychological effects were profound. Touch released calming chemicals in the brain. It reduced stress, reinforced social bonds, and signaled that it was safe to drift into sleep. Grooming circles became nightly traditions that strengthened group cohesion. These developments shaped not just the quality of sleep but the meaning of it. Sleeping became a shared experience rather than a desperate gamble against the night. Humans began choosing places that offered comfort, not just safety. Leaves, soft grasses, furs from hunted animals, and woven plant fibers were gathered to make sleeping areas more pleasant. The smell of smoke mingled with the scent of earth, creating an atmosphere uniquely comforting to early humans. These sensory cues became embedded in the brain as signals of rest, a legacy still seen today in how humans react to warm light, soft textures, and rhythmic sounds. Even the fire itself became part of sleep ritual. Keeping flames alive required skill and attention. Over time, humans began arranging firewood strategically, predicting how long a log would burn, and choosing fuels that provided the slowest, most stable light. Watching the fire die gradually signaled that sleep time was approaching. The dimming flames were the first clock humans ever used, a natural timer that organized the group's rest cycles. Communal sleeping shaped trust and empathy. Humans learned to position themselves in certain ways, stronger individuals near the edges, elders closer to the fire, children in the warmest center. These patterns formed naturally, guided by instinct and reinforced through repeated behavior. Over countless generations, humans internalized these protective formations, giving rise to a deeply rooted understanding that nighttime is a time for bonding, closeness, and emotional security. The darkness outside was still full of threats, but inside the circle of light, humans created their own world, one that belonged to them alone. The presence of fire made storytelling possible. Before sleep, individuals began recounting the events of the day, an animal spotted, a danger escaped, a path discovered. These early narratives weren't full stories, but fragments of shared memory. They helped coordinate future behavior and deepen group connection. Eventually, meaning seeped into these moments. Lessons were passed down. Patterns were recognized. Rituals became inherited. Sleep itself was changing. Because humans felt safer, they allowed themselves longer stretches of deeper rest. Their dreams grew more vivid. Their memory of those dreams also strengthened. Some individuals started interpreting dreams, believing they contained messages or warnings. Even if primitive, this interpretation influenced how the group behaved. A dream about a dangerous animal might cause the entire group to relocate. A dream about abundant fruit might lead to exploration. Dreams became part of nightly discussions, an early form of shared psychology. Nighttime rituals also expanded through objects. Humans began keeping certain items close: bones shaped by hand, stones used for grinding, feathers or pieces of hide that brought comfort. These objects served as anchors during the night, symbolic extensions of identity, memory, or security. The earliest symbolic thinking took root in these moments, linking sleep to meaning, belief, and emotion. And then there were the shadows. Firelight cast moving shapes on cave walls, producing patterns that fascinated early humans. Some traced these shadows with their fingers or sticks, creating marks that resembled animals or abstract shapes. In these quiet moments before sleep, the first stirrings of art emerged. Creativity awakened not during the chaos of the day but in the gentle transition between wakefulness and dreams. These rituals also helped regulate fear. The more humans repeated them, the more predictable and comforting nighttime became. Fear transformed into routine. Routine became safety. Safety became culture. What started as simple survival behaviors gradually evolved into practices that shaped human identity. Around the fire, humans learned to soothe stress, face fears, and strengthen emotional resilience. In these nightly gatherings, humans experienced something no other species had: collective rest supported by collective trust. Instead of scattering to hide alone, humans slept together. Instead of relying solely on instinct, they followed ritual. Instead of drifting into unconsciousness randomly, their minds were guided toward rest by sound, touch, warmth, and shared presence. Nighttime became the birthplace of humanity's emotional complexity. It was during these moments, after the hunts, before the dreams, that humans became more than creatures surviving the dark. They became communities. They became thinkers. They became beings who found meaning in the night, not just fear. Through rituals, humans learned that sleep was not a surrender to darkness but a return to safety. A temporary drift into vulnerability supported by trust and belonging. In this quiet space, humanity learned to rest, not just with the body, but with the heart. In the prehistoric world, the night demanded silence, not just as a preference, but as a rule for survival. Every sound carried weight. A snapped twig could bring predators. A loud breath could reveal a hiding place. Early humans learned quickly that to live through the darkness, they had to communicate without alerting the very creatures that hunted them. Out of this pressure, a new kind of language emerged, not spoken in full voice, not carved or painted, but shaped through whispers, gestures, subtle breaths, and quiet footsteps. This silent language became one of humanity's earliest tools for surviving the night. Imagine a moonlit savanna or a dense forest where shadows stretch across the ground. A group of early humans is preparing to sleep, settling around the fire. The Nightwatchers sit slightly apart, their attention fixed on the edges of visibility. But even when danger approached, they could not shout. Loud panic would wake the tribe, yes, but it would also draw predators directly toward their location. Instead, communication had to be delicate, soft, precise, and instantly understood. This is where whispers began. A whisper wasn't just a quieter version of speech. It required control of breath, restraint of vocal cords, and a conscious effort to shape sound without carrying it into the night. Whispering became the first nighttime dialect, a form of speech optimized for stealth. It allowed early humans to coordinate movement, warn of threats, or ask for help without sacrificing safety. But whispers were only one part of the silent language. Soft steps became another. Walking at night required a different relationship with the ground. Early humans learned to place their feet carefully, rolling them gently over soil, sand, or leaves to minimize noise. They adjusted their gait based on terrain, stepping on stones when possible, avoiding dry branches, choosing softer earth over brittle grass. These movements were almost dance-like, a quiet rhythm shaped by generations of practice. Parents taught children how to move silently long before they taught them how to speak fully. Elders demonstrated how to tread lightly through the darkness. These skills were not optional, they were essential. A loud child wandering in the night could attract predators, placing the entire group at risk. So silence became a form of discipline, a behavior passed down with care and urgency. Acoustic awareness also sharpened. Early humans developed the ability to distinguish subtle noises, the difference between a predator's step and a grazing animal's shuffle, between wind in the leaves and the careful stalking of a huntsman's cat. Their ears became attuned to nighttime frequencies far more precisely than modern humans can imagine. They understood the significance of pauses, knowing that silence itself could signal danger. An abrupt stop in insect song or bird calls meant that something larger was moving nearby. The environment spoke a language of sound, and humans learned to listen. Communication evolved to incorporate nonverbal cues as well. Hand signals, simple but effective, allowed nightwatchers to direct others in near darkness. A raised hand meant pause. A quick gesture meant approach cautiously. A tap on the shoulder meant shift positions or follow quietly. These gestures formed the earliest structure of visual language used in nighttime survival. Breathing, too, became part of communication. A sudden inhale could signal surprise. A slow exhale might calm someone nearby. People learned to regulate their breath in the dark, quieting themselves in unison. In group sleeping formations, synchronized breathing created a shared rhythm, reinforcing the sense of safety and helping everyone sleep more deeply. The nighttime environment also encouraged humans to develop better auditory memory. They remembered which sounds belonged to certain animals, how far away a noise was, and whether the tone of a predator's growl indicated hunger, warning, or territorial display. They remembered the pattern of cracking branches that signaled hyenas and the soft thud of paws that meant a big cat was near. This memory shaped how they responded to threats, helping them plan escape routes or position watchers in strategic places. Over time, this silent communication became a refined system, more complex than instinct, more deliberate than simple mimicry. It created a shared understanding within groups. Family units and small tribes developed distinct nighttime dialects, recognizable by their own members but foreign to outsiders. The ability to coordinate quietly during the night strengthened trust and cooperation. It allowed groups to hunt stealthily at dawn, relocate camps without drawing attention, and protect the vulnerable without panicking. This silent language influenced the evolution of verbal speech as well. Whispering required precise control of airflow and articulation. Soft vocalizations encouraged new phonetic shapes. The ability to communicate quietly under pressure laid the foundation for more complex language systems during the day. In a very real sense, the need to survive the night helped shape how humans learned to speak at all. The shadows of the night also shaped emotional expression. Early humans learned that a gentle touch could replace words, that a silent nod could calm fear, that eye contact could guide or reassure. These forms of connection strengthened social bonds without noise. Even after humans developed spoken language, these silent cues remained essential parts of human communication, present today in gestures, body language, and the instinct to lower our voices in danger. Night's pressure molded human cognitive development as well. The ability to interpret faint sounds trained the brain's auditory cortex. The constant evaluation of risk sharpened decision-making. The memory of specific environmental cues strengthened pattern recognition. These nocturnal challenges made early humans smarter, more perceptive, and more adaptable. The silent language of the night wasn't a single system, it was a network of instinct, behavior, and learned skill. It allowed humans to navigate darkness with surprising grace and precision. It protected them from predators without sacrificing social cohesion. It laid a foundation for the emotional, cooperative, and linguistic abilities that would eventually define humanity. Even today, remnants of this ancient communication remain. Humans instinctively whisper in the dark. Footsteps become lighter at night. People lower their voices when they sense danger. Parents hush their babies with gentle sounds that echo prehistoric lullabies. Our nervous systems still respond to silence and subtle noises with heightened awareness, a whisper of evolutionary memory. This silent language kept early humans alive. It taught them how to move quietly, think clearly, and listen deeply. And it transformed the darkness from an enemy into a teacher, shaping the very skills that made human intelligence possible. As early humans grew more secure in their nighttime rituals and shared protection, something unexpected began to happen. The grip of fear loosened. The night was still dangerous, yes, but it was no longer an unbroken realm of terror. Firelight brought comfort. Companionship brought reassurance. And dreams, once chaotic bursts of imagery, began to stir curiosity instead of confusion. In this shifting atmosphere, the human mind found room to wonder. For the first time in history, humans began asking not just how to survive the night, but why the night existed at all. Why the body shut down. Why the mind drifted. Why dreams came and went like shadows. Fear became the spark for philosophy. Imagine a small group of humans sitting beside the fire after a long day. The flames dance across their faces as they drift in and out of conversation. One person recounts a strange dream from the previous night, an animal that spoke, a landscape that twisted, a moment that felt real but impossible. Others listen with interest, sensing something significant hidden in the dream's strange logic. Night after night, these discussions deepen. Humans begin to search for meaning in the visions that arrive when their eyes are closed. Dreams became the first mysteries humanity ever tried to interpret. They raised questions no one had asked before. Why do we see things in our sleep? Where do these images come from? Are they warnings? Messages? Spirits? Why do good dreams feel comforting and bad dreams feel hauntingly real? With no language yet rich enough to answer these questions precisely, early humans turned to imagination. Dreams seemed too vivid to ignore. They felt too meaningful to dismiss. So humans filled the gaps with story, belief, and symbolism. They began treating dreams as glimpses into hidden realms, worlds beyond the physical one. This was the birth of spiritual thinking. Fear didn't disappear, it transformed. Instead of fearing predators exclusively, humans now feared the unknown inside their own minds. But they also found awe in it. The night, once a time only for survival, became a time for contemplation. Humans began noticing patterns. Dreams often reflected events of the day. Nightmares followed moments of danger or emotional turmoil. Pleasant dreams came after peaceful nights. The link between life and the dreaming world became unmistakable. This awareness changed the relationship between humans and sleep. Sleep was no longer a passive fall into vulnerability, it became a journey. A place where problems could be solved, memories replayed, or emotions confronted. Early humans didn't speak in the language of neuroscience or psychology, but their instinctive interpretations often mirrored these concepts. They believed dreams offered guidance. They believed the mind traveled somewhere at night. Some imagined ancestors visiting them in sleep. Others thought the soul left the body. These beliefs shaped rituals, practices, and taboos around sleep. Sleep itself gained meaning. People began treating it as sacred or mysterious. Before lying down, some placed symbolic objects near them, bones, stones, feathers, to ward off negative visions. Others developed gestures or whispered phrases to ensure peaceful dreams. These practices were the earliest attempts to influence the inner world through ritual. As language evolved, conversations about sleep became more complex. Humans began sharing deeper reflections. Why does sleep restore strength? Why do we feel different when we dream? Where does consciousness go during sleep? These questions marked a monumental shift in human cognition. Humans were no longer reacting to the world, they were trying to understand it. Even the patterns of day and night sparked reflection. The cycle of light and darkness became one of the earliest metaphors, day for life, night for the unknown. The transition between them inspired stories about gods, spirits, and cosmic rhythms. Sleep became woven into these stories. It was seen as a miniature death, a temporary surrender of control. Awakening became a symbolic rebirth. Around firelight, elders interpreted dreams for the young. Some dreams were considered omens. Others were dismissed as meaningless. Through this process, humanity began developing early psychology, a primitive, instinctual version of understanding the mind. Groups that treated dreams seriously often learned from them. A dream of a dangerous animal might prompt relocation. A dream about water might lead to exploration. Even if the dreams were not literal, they influenced real-world decisions. The more humans questioned sleep, the more they questioned themselves. Why did some people dream vividly while others rarely remembered their dreams? Why did some nightmares repeat? Why did certain dreams cause physical reactions, sweating, trembling, or waking with tears? These questions pulled humans into deeper introspection. Sleep, once feared only for its vulnerability, became a window into the mind's hidden workings. With reflection came storytelling. Myths were born from dreams. Tales of monsters, heroes, spirits, and gods often originated from nighttime visions. Dreams gave humans a creative vocabulary that eventually shaped culture, religion, and early forms of art. Symbolism took root. Shadows on cave walls transformed into imagined beasts. Patterns in firelight became metaphors for the dream world. Sleep also brought an early understanding of life's rhythms. Humans began noticing that animals, too, exhibited patterns of rest. Predators chose strategic moments to sleep. Birds tucked their heads beneath their wings. Even insects rested in cycles. This realization expanded human curiosity. Sleep was universal, not exclusive to them. It must, therefore, serve a deeper purpose. Slowly, a philosophical conclusion emerged: sleep was not the enemy. It was part of existence. It held meaning. It shaped consciousness. It connected living beings to something greater, whether nature, spirit, or imagination. Thus, in the quiet hours between firelight and darkness, humans took their first steps toward understanding the mind. Curiosity bloomed where terror once lived. And from the simple act of closing their eyes each night, humans learned to ask questions that would one day form the basis of science, religion, and the pursuit of meaning itself. Through sleep, humanity discovered wonder. Long before humans tried to understand the purpose of sleep, the natural world had already explored nearly every possible variation of it. Sleep was not a single behavior shared equally across species, it was a vast spectrum shaped by environment, biology, and survival strategy. From creatures that slept upside down in caves to those that rested only half their brain at a time, the diversity of sleep revealed a deeper truth: there was no one correct way to sleep. Instead, sleep evolved as a flexible tool, adapted uniquely by every species facing the dangers and demands of its world. By examining these differences, early humans, whether consciously or subconsciously, began to recognize that sleep was not a weakness but a universal strategy woven into life itself. Imagine the darkness of a cave, silent and cool, with thousands of tiny bodies hanging upside down. Bats, masters of night navigation, spend their days in deep rest. Their sleep is extreme, they enter a state where their metabolism slows dramatically, conserving energy for the intense bursts of nighttime hunting. Suspended by their feet, they remain hidden from predators, using gravity to their advantage. Their unusual position protects them, allowing them to launch instantly into flight if danger approaches. For bats, sleep is not simply rest, it is camouflage. It is protection. It is efficiency. Move now to the open grasslands where elephants roam. These giants live in a world where size is their shield, yet even they must approach sleep with caution. Elephants sleep astonishingly little, only 2 to 4 hours a night. Their massive bodies require constant feeding, and they cannot afford long stretches of vulnerability. When they do sleep, they often do so standing, gently swaying, their trunks resting lightly on the ground. Only during complete exhaustion or safety within the herd do they lie down. Elephants experience REM sleep so rarely that some go days without dreaming. For them, survival requires wakefulness. Sleep is rationed like water. Journey next to the oceans, where dolphins glide through moonlit waters. Unlike land animals, dolphins cannot surrender fully to unconsciousness. They need to surface for air every few minutes. To solve this, evolution gifted them a remarkable adaptation: unihemispheric sleep. Only half their brain sleeps at a time while the other half stays alert enough to navigate, breathe, and detect threats. Their eyes alternate rest, one closes while the other stays open, watching the shifting world around them. This split consciousness sleep shows an entirely different approach to survival: rest without immobility, vigilance without full wakefulness. For dolphins, sleep is a negotiation, not a pause. Even among birds, sleep performs a delicate balancing act. Migratory species can sleep mid-flight, entering micro-rest states lasting only seconds. Certain birds sleeping in flocks keep one eye open and one hemisphere of the brain awake to scan for predators. On the edges of these flocks, sentinels sleep lighter, waking at the slightest disturbance. In this way, sleep becomes a shared responsibility, a biological teamwork that echoes human nightwatchers. Reptiles, amphibians, and even insects exhibit simpler forms of rest, but each species adapts sleep to fit its life. Crocodiles sleep with one eye open, their bodies appearing still while their minds remain partially alert. Snakes rest in coils that disguise their outlines. Bees enter a sleep-like state inside their hives, conserving energy and preparing for the next day's labor. Every creature, from the smallest ant to the largest whale, must shut down in some way to survive. And yet, despite these differences, one truth connects them all: sleep evolved independently in countless species because it was necessary. Whether it occurred for minutes or hours, in water or on land, upside down or half-conscious, every form of sleep served a purpose. It restored energy. It repaired cells. It organized memories. It sustained life. Early humans, though unaware of the scientific explanations, observed these patterns instinctively. They noticed animals disappearing during certain hours. They learned that predators hunted at specific times and rested at others. They saw birds closing one eye and mammals hiding in burrows. These observations shaped early human strategies: when to gather, when to travel, when to hide. The natural world offered a library of survival lessons written in the language of sleep. Humans, too, developed unique adaptations. Unlike many animals, humans evolved to sleep in communal groups rather than alone. This created opportunities for longer, deeper rest phases. With fire to ward off predators and nightwatchers to guard the perimeter, humans gained something rare: the ability to enter extended sleep cycles filled with rich dreams and complex cognitive processing. These deeper cycles helped shape memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and the development of abstract thought. In the animal kingdom, few species had such luxury. But humans also faced challenges. Unlike bats or elephants or dolphins, humans lacked natural armor, strength, or specialized senses. This vulnerability pushed human sleep to become highly adaptable. Our brains learned to wake easily, respond quickly, and recover efficiently. Humans developed the ability to dream vividly, turning imagination into a survival mechanism. They learned to synchronize sleep patterns socially, creating group safety through cooperation rather than biology alone. By comparing human sleep to that of other species, a profound truth becomes clear: sleep is not a flaw, it is a masterpiece of evolution. Every species approaches it differently, yet all rely on it. The diversity of sleep across life shows that vulnerability can evolve into strength when shaped correctly. Bats survive because they sleep. Elephants endure because they sleep. Dolphins navigate danger because they sleep. Humans became thinkers, storytellers, and inventors because we sleep. The animal kingdom demonstrates that sleep is a canvas painted with countless evolutionary strategies. Some species minimize it. Some fragment it. Some alternate brain hemispheres. But all must engage with it. In this grand biological tapestry, humans occupy a special place, not because our sleep is superior, but because it is deeply tied to our inner world. Our creativity, memory, emotional depth, and imaginative power all trace back to ancient nights of protected rest. By understanding how other species sleep, early humans gained insight into their own nature. They saw that the night was not merely a threat, it was a universal rhythm pulsing through all living things. In the moonlit world of predators and prey, sleep shaped survival in 1,000 different ways. And through observing those differences, humans learned that life itself depended on the very act of surrendering to the dark. As the human brain evolved, growing larger and more complex with each passing generation, it gained extraordinary abilities: memory, imagination, planning, empathy, creativity. But with this expanding power came a hidden cost. Consciousness, brilliant as it is, consumes enormous energy. Every thought, every decision, every emotional reaction uses precious resources. And in the raw prehistoric world, where every calorie mattered, the brain needed a way to sustain itself without burning out. The answer was something ancient yet profoundly refined: sleep. Not as weakness, but as the biological maintenance cycle of consciousness. Imagine an early human navigating a long day, hunting, gathering, tracking, solving problems, avoiding predators, reading signs in nature. Their brain works constantly, firing millions of neural connections, analyzing patterns, responding to danger. Even at rest during daylight, the brain remains alert, scanning for threats. By nightfall, this immense biological machine is overloaded. Neurons become clogged with metabolic waste. Circuits slow. Emotional responses destabilize. Without intervention, the brain would malfunction. Sleep became the solution. Not a luxury, an emergency repair system. While the body rested, the brain entered a series of stages designed to perform essential tasks. In slow-wave sleep, the deepest phase, neurons synchronized in powerful rhythmic pulses. These rhythms washed metabolic toxins from the brain, clearing away the chemical buildup caused by prolonged thinking and stress. Without this nightly cleansing, early humans would have woken confused, slow, or emotionally unstable, dangerous conditions in a world where clarity meant survival. As brain complexity increased, so did the need for organized memory. Early humans relied heavily on remembering where food was found, which plants were safe, how predators behaved, and where shelter could be found. The more memory they accumulated, the harder the brain worked to store and organize it. Sleep offered the perfect environment. During dreaming cycles, memories were replayed, sorted, strengthened, or discarded. Important survival lessons were reinforced, while unneeded details faded. Sleep turned experience into knowledge. But sleep also dealt with something far more delicate: emotion. In waking life, early humans confronted constant stress, fear of predators, conflict within groups, the struggle to find food. The brain absorbed these experiences, sometimes overwhelmingly. Sleep allowed emotions to settle. Dreaming let the mind rehearse intense scenarios in symbolic form, softening emotional impact and preparing the individual for future challenges. It was a nightly therapy session, built into biology. Yet the origins of sleep's complexity were found not only in humans but in the animals that came before. The first creatures to develop primitive consciousness, simple awareness of danger and opportunity, faced the same energy demands. Their neural circuits needed rest. Their survival depended on the ability to reset. Sleep evolved alongside the brain because it was inseparable from consciousness. The more a species thought, the more it needed to rest. When humans entered the evolutionary stage, their brains became so advanced that sleep transformed from a simple cycle into a sophisticated system. Every stage had a purpose. Light sleep monitored the environment, keeping early humans alert to danger. Deep sleep repaired tissues, strengthened immunity, and stabilized the body. Dream sleep strengthened creativity and emotional processing. Without these cycles, early humans would not have survived long enough to develop culture, language, or imagination. This biological need created tension. The intelligent mind required periods of complete vulnerability. Every night, early humans had to choose, or rather, obey, a state where predators could strike, storms could hit, and danger could slip into their shelters. Consciousness demanded downtime, but the world offered no assurance of safety. This conflict shaped the evolution of human cooperation. Nightwatchers emerged partially because the brain demanded rest that could not be ignored. Groups learned to protect each other because the mind needed protection while undergoing its nightly reset. As the human brain grew even larger, the cost became even steeper. Burnout was deadly. A tired mind misjudged danger, reacted too slowly, forgot crucial details, or panicked unnecessarily. Sleep deprivation quickly became one of the most dangerous states an early human could enter. Individuals who did not sleep enough became liabilities to their groups. Evolution naturally favored those who could fall asleep efficiently, recover quickly, and maintain a balanced sleep-wake rhythm. Another challenge appeared: imagination. As human minds became capable of complex thought, they also became capable of rumination, overthinking threats, dwelling on fear, worrying about the future. These new mental abilities demanded a counterbalance. Sleep provided that counterbalance by quieting certain brain regions and reorganizing thought patterns. Even today, humans experiencing stress find relief after dreaming, as if the mind has been washed clean and reorganized overnight. In a sense, the earliest philosophers were not the ones who asked questions, they were the ones whose brains required sleep to keep those questions from becoming overwhelming. The cost of consciousness also manifested physically. Humans with prolonged sleep loss became sick more easily. Their coordination weakened. Their decisions grew reckless. Their social behavior deteriorated. In early human groups, these problems could lead to exile or death. Sleep was the invisible guardian that kept the tribe functioning. Deep within the brain, entire networks evolved specifically to transition the mind into sleep. Hormones like melatonin signaled darkness, cortisol prepared the body for dawn. These rhythms were synchronized with the rising and setting of the sun, embedding sleep into human biology at a fundamental level. As humanity advanced, the need for sleep never weakened. If anything, it increased. The more humans relied on thought, creativity, and emotional complexity, the more sleep became essential. Even today, modern humans with overactive minds experience burnout faster than any other species. The mind is powerful, but it is fragile without rest. This is the paradox at the heart of human evolution. The very thing that makes humans extraordinary, their consciousness, requires them to surrender it nightly. Sleep is the price of intelligence. It is the reset button for the mind, the maintenance cycle for memory, the emotional stabilizer for the spirit. Without it, consciousness collapses under its own weight. In the prehistoric world, humans learned this lesson not through science but through survival. Their brains taught them that rest was not optional. It was the foundation upon which every thought, every instinct, every story, and every dream was built. Sleep wasn't a pause. It was the engine that kept the mind alive. In the ancient world, no human survived alone. The landscape was too unforgiving, the predators too powerful, the nights too long. Survival depended on cooperation, shared food, shared tools, and most importantly, shared sleep. As human groups grew more organized, something remarkable emerged: coordinated sleep systems. No other species developed this level of synchronized rest and vigilance. It was not merely instinct, it was strategy, an evolving choreography of protection, trust, and biological diversity within early tribes. Imagine a small band of early humans settling for the night. The fire crackles at the center, faint warmth pushing back the cold. Around it, members position themselves in carefully considered patterns, not chosen by chance. Light sleepers lie near the edges, closest to danger. Heavy sleepers cluster near the center, where warmth and protection are greatest. Mothers and children form a tight core, buffered by the bodies of stronger adults. Elders, whose wisdom is valued but whose reflexes may have slowed, rest closer to the fire where danger is least likely to reach. This was not a taught formation, it evolved naturally through necessity. Groups that slept with awareness and structure survived. Those that did not often vanished. Sleep in early human bands was never simultaneous or uniform. Chronotype diversity, some individuals naturally favoring early nights, others inclined toward late hours, created a built-in shift system long before anyone understood genetics. These natural differences were not flaws but essential survival tools. The tribe always had people awake at different times, forming a living rotation of vigilance. Nightwatchers were not appointed, they emerged from biology. During the first hours of night, as the fire still burned strongly, some individuals remained awake, those whose bodies resisted early sleep. They tended the flames, listened to distant sounds, and watched the edges of darkness. As these individuals finally grew tired, another group, rested from napping earlier or wired for lighter sleep, would naturally stir and take their place. Dawn was greeted by yet another set of chronotypes, the early risers, who woke before the light fully returned. This biological relay system ensured that the tribe was rarely, if ever, completely unconscious. It was evolution's answer to the deadly vulnerability of deep sleep. In these coordinated patterns, communication was minimal but effective. A hand on a shoulder meant, "Stay alert." A quiet breath or a soft shuffle signaled a shift in duty. Some watchers hummed softly to stay awake, a sound recognized by the group as reassurance. If danger approached, a single controlled sound, a whisper, a click, a sharp inhale, was enough to rouse others without drawing the attention of predators. Through these nighttime dynamics, early humans developed an unparalleled sense of collective responsibility. Sleep became a shared project, not just an individual act. The safety of one depended on the vigilance of another. Trust grew in this arrangement. People knew who would wake easily at night, who had sharp senses in darkness, who could keep calm during emergencies. These recognitions shaped early social roles long before formal hierarchies existed. Even children participated in this coordinated system. Young ones often woke sporadically during the night, and their movement sometimes served as an unexpected alarm system, an instinctual alert before their minds could understand danger. Elders, though slower, had decades of sensory memory. A faint sound that others dismissed might trigger their recollection of a similar danger from years before. Their wisdom provided early warning interpretations that saved lives more than once. Within tribes, sleep habits influenced group identity. Some groups became known for traveling long distances, relying on strong early risers. Others excelled at night hunts, supported by individuals who were naturally nocturnal. Each tribe's sleep rhythm became a cultural fingerprint, shaped by environment, genetics, and necessity. The presence of fire enhanced these systems. Flames provided a visual marker for the watchers, anything crossing the boundary of light became instantly detectable. They also warmed sleepers, enabling deeper rest and greater recovery. Yet fire required tending, so each tribe developed nighttime fire routines. Some preferred adding small wood pieces frequently. Others used slow-burning logs. This fire maintenance naturally synchronized with the watchers' shifts. Nightwatch tribes also developed early rules about where to sleep. They avoided low ground where cold air pooled. They avoided areas near water sources at night, since predators routinely visited for hunting. They selected high ground with visibility or caves with limited entry points. Over generations, these choices transformed into cultural knowledge, passed verbally or through imitation. Another remarkable feature of coordinated sleep was emotional bonding. In close sleeping formations, tribe members shared warmth, touch, and breath. These sensory experiences strengthened trust, encouraged cooperation, and reduced stress. Sleeping together became a way of affirming belonging. To lie near the fire was to be accepted. To be pushed toward the edge was to be warned, or in rare cases, exiled. Nightwatch coordination also influenced reproductive patterns. Mating pairs often slept close, while rivals positioned themselves further apart. Alliances formed through nighttime proximity. Even the position in the sleeping circle could hint at social standing. Yet, despite these subtle hierarchies, survival always remained the ultimate priority. In times of danger, distinctions dissolved, the tribe acted as one. The coordination extended beyond protection. The staggered wake cycles allowed tribes to remain active for longer hours overall. Some members could prepare tools at night, tend to injuries, feed infants, or preserve food. This extended productivity gave humans advantages over other species that slept all at once. It meant the tribe could react quickly to opportunities or dangers even during late hours. As this system persisted for thousands of generations, human bodies adapted further. Light sleepers, night owls, and early risers all became stable parts of the gene pool. The diversity in sleep patterns ensured continuity of vigilance. Without this diversity, coordinated sleep would have collapsed. Entire tribes might have fallen prey to predators. Evolution favored variation, not uniformity. These ancient rhythms still shape modern humans. Families today include early birds and night owls. Some people sleep deeply, others wake to the smallest noise. Many find comfort sleeping near others, some instinctively prefer corners or walls. These tendencies are echoes of prehistoric nights, woven into the nervous system. The coordinated sleep of early human bands was not just a survival strategy, it was the birthplace of community. It taught humans how to rely on each other, how to divide responsibility, how to interpret trust through behavior rather than words. It influenced social structure, emotional development, and even the evolution of human empathy. Without these early tribes and their silent choreography of vigilance and rest, humanity would not have lasted long enough to develop civilization. It was in these shared nights, half darkness, half firelight, that humans learned the most important lesson of survival: no one endures the night alone. The night shaped tribes. The tribes shaped sleep. And together, they shaped the future of humanity. As early humans moved across plains, forests, and valleys, they slowly began to realize that survival wasn't only about strength or speed, it was about creating safety. For millions of years, creatures had relied on natural shelters, caves, overhangs, tree hollows, and dense thickets. But humans, with their growing intelligence and cooperative instincts, began shaping their environment in ways no other species had attempted. This new era marked a turning point in human sleep. For the first time in history, humans weren't just surviving the night, they were designing it. Imagine an early human group settling near the entrance of a cave, not as wanderers seeking temporary rest, but as a community preparing to stay. They gather stones, branches, mud, and animal hides, constructing barriers that narrow the cave's entry. They pile thorny branches along the edges to deter predators. Inside, they clear space, smooth uneven ground, and place bedding materials strategically. This is not mere instinct, it is intentional design. They are building the earliest form of a home. The impact on sleep is immediate. Instead of lying exposed beneath the sky, vulnerable to every noise and shifting shadow, they are now enclosed within walls that soften wind, absorb nighttime sounds, and shield them from surprise attacks. The cave transforms into a psychological sanctuary. It allows bodies to relax in ways never before possible. Sleep deepens. Dreams lengthen. Recovery improves. This shift marks a profound evolutionary advantage. As generations pass, humans begin experimenting with structures outside caves. They build shelters from branches bent into arches, covered with leaves or animal skins. They learn which materials keep out rain and which trap warmth. They discover how to anchor structures against wind, how to layer soft bedding, and how to position fires so smoke escapes while heat remains. These early architectural experiments lead to more consistent, stable environments, homes that feel familiar night after night. Sleep transforms again. With safer sleeping spaces, humans spend less time scanning for danger and more time entering deep sleep cycles crucial for memory, emotional regulation, and creative thinking. The expansion of REM sleep fuels imagination and complex problem-solving. The human mind begins to flourish, not just function. Shelters also promote stronger social cohesion. Sleeping spaces become shared territories where families, allies, and group members gather. Their closeness fosters emotional intimacy and trust. The night, once a time of scattered hiding, becomes a time of unity. Humans now fall asleep hearing the calm breathing of companions, not the distant growls of predators. This rhythmic soundscape creates a sense of belonging and safety unmatched in the animal kingdom. The placement of homes also influences sleep. Humans learn to build near water sources but not too close, away from floods, but within reach. They choose high ground for visibility, but sheltered areas for warmth. They orient shelters so early sunlight enters at just the right angle to signal morning. These choices strengthen circadian rhythms, connecting architecture with biology. Sleep becomes predictable, synchronized with the environment. In colder climates, humans create insulated structures using furs and thick walls. In warmer regions, they build open shelters allowing airflow while still offering protection. Each environment shapes its own unique architecture, and each architectural adaptation improves sleep quality in different ways. These advances make humans more resilient, giving them an edge over predators and competing species. Homes also allow humans to store bedding materials permanently. Soft grasses, moss, feathers, and animal hides accumulate over time. Families create specific sleeping spots and improve them constantly. For the first time, personal comfort becomes a part of survival behavior. Comfort leads to better sleep, and better sleep leads to sharper minds and healthier bodies. With homes come rituals. People begin cleaning sleeping areas regularly, shaking out bedding, arranging possessions, and maintaining order. These behaviors, though simple, create a psychological environment of stability. Sleeping in the same place each night reinforces a sense of familiarity that helps reduce stress. The mind learns to associate the home with safety, allowing deeper rest. Fire placement becomes a deliberate science. Humans build stone rings to contain flames, create venting holes in shelters, and place embers strategically to maintain heat without sparking dangerous flare-ups. The glow of fire inside a home changes the emotional tone of night completely. Instead of battling darkness, humans control it. The home also becomes a teaching space. Children learn where to sleep safely, how to avoid dangerous areas, how to interpret nighttime sounds. These lessons pass through generations, strengthening collective knowledge. As homes become more permanent, knowledge becomes tradition. The evolution of sleep continues in cycles. The safer humans feel, the longer and deeper their sleep becomes. And the deeper their sleep becomes, the more their minds expand. Over centuries, this relationship fuels cognitive leaps, language development, problem-solving, memory formation. Architecture doesn't just protect humans physically, it shapes their minds. Eventually, humans begin constructing more elaborate dwellings, wooden frameworks, stone barricades, semi-permanent huts. Communities form. Sleep becomes coordinated not just within a small band but across multiple families living in shared settlements. Noise patterns shift. Nighttime duties become more structured. Fire maintenance rotates. People begin to specialize, some excel at building, others at foraging, others at guarding. The home is now a cultural symbol. Through homes, humans learn to rest in ways that reshape their species. With longer, safer sleep, their immune systems strengthen. Their emotional resilience grows. Their creativity expands. Their memory becomes sharper. Their relationships deepen. All because they no longer had to sleep exposed to the world's unforgiving dangers. What began as bundles of leaves beneath a rocky overhang evolved into complex structures that ultimately gave birth to civilization. Without the stability of a home, humans could not have developed farms, tools, society, or culture. And without the foundation of safe, restorative sleep, none of the mental breakthroughs that define humanity would have been possible. The dawn of homes did more than shelter bodies. It sheltered dreams. Night has fully settled over the prehistoric world. The fire burns low, casting long shadows that sway gently over the sleeping forms huddled together. For early humans, this is the moment when consciousness loosens its grip, and the mind drifts into a realm untouched by daylight's logic. While the body grows still, the brain awakens in an entirely different way, igniting into a world of images, sounds, fears, memories, and impossible creations. This inner world, invisible from the outside, was one of the most extraordinary evolutionary developments in the history of life. To understand it is to step into the deep night, where dreams are born. Imagine a single sleeper, a young hunter, exhausted from the day's journey, slowly surrendering to sleep. As their eyelids grow heavy, their brain transitions through phases. First comes light sleep, where consciousness dims but does not fully vanish. Muscles relax. The heartbeat steadies. The world grows distant, muffled. Yet the mind still clings to the border between waking and dreaming. In this threshold state, flashes of imagery appear, abstract shapes, sudden jolts, the sensation of falling. These are remnants of ancient survival instincts, the brain testing its systems before deeply disconnecting. Then, gradually, the sleeper descends into slow-wave sleep, the deepest and most restorative stage. In this state, the brain's electrical activity synchronizes into rhythmic waves. It is here that restoration happens, toxins cleared, memory sorted, muscles repaired. While the outside world is forgotten, the brain is hard at work, preparing for another day. But this is still not dreaming. Dreaming belongs to a later stage, one of the most mysterious cycles nature ever crafted. Eventually, the sleeper transitions into REM sleep, rapid eye movement, the phase where the brain becomes almost as active as when awake. And in this electric storm of neural activity, the dreaming brain opens its gates. Inside the dream, the young hunter finds himself standing on an impossibly wide plain. The sky above swirls with shifting colors. A herd of animals runs in slow motion across the horizon, their shapes melting into shadows. The hunter begins to run too, though it feels like wading through deep water. His mind stitches together memories of the day, tracks he saw on the ground, the distant roar of predators, the shape of the forest. But the dream exaggerates them, rearranges them, blends them into impossible combinations. This is the cinematic magic of the dreaming brain. Unlike waking consciousness, which obeys rules and logic, the dreaming mind creates freely. It experiments. It rehearses. It plays. The brain activates regions responsible for emotion, memory, sensation, and imagination all at once. Meanwhile, the areas associated with rational thinking and physical control quiet down. This design allows the dream to unfold without restrictions, fluid, strange, and deeply symbolic. In these dreams, early humans encountered their fears in safe form. A predator might appear larger than life, its eyes glowing unnaturally bright. But the dreamer could face it without dying, learning from the terror in ways reality would never allow. Sometimes the hunter might experience falling, chased, or trapped, scenarios that sharpen the brain's response to danger. Other times, the dream would weave more peaceful images, running freely, climbing, or discovering new paths. These dreams encouraged exploration and creativity. As the hunter sleeps, his eyes flicker beneath closed lids, mirroring the movement within the dream. His breathing changes rhythm. His fingers twitch slightly, as if grasping a weapon or climbing a tree. These small motions reflect the brain's simulation of life. Yet the body remains safely immobilized, a critical adaptation preventing dream actions from becoming real. Without this paralysis, early humans might have acted out their dreams, endangering themselves or others. The dream continues to shift. Now the hunter finds himself speaking with someone who is not alive, an elder who passed seasons ago. Their face is familiar, their voice strangely clear. The brain is revisiting a memory, but in dream logic, the elder becomes a guide, offering wisdom or warnings. This was one of the earliest ways humans processed loss, grief, and longing, through the symbolic language of dreams. In another moment, the hunter may see patterns on the ground, spirals, lines, dots, that resemble early art forms. These symbols arise from the brain trying to categorize and organize information. Even before humans drew on cave walls, dreams taught them how to think symbolically. Patterns in dreams eventually inspired patterns in art, rituals, and storytelling. The hunter's dream continues as the night deepens. Scenes shift suddenly. One moment he is floating above a river, the next he is trapped in thick mud. These transitions mirror the brain's attempt to review different memories rapidly, connecting unrelated events in creative ways. This mental mixing sparks innovation. A dream might show a new way to trap animals or a shortcut through dangerous terrain. Solutions appear without conscious effort. Even fear dreams, nightmares, play an essential role. They force the brain to confront worst-case scenarios, preparing the dreamer emotionally and mentally. A nightmare about a predator might teach the hunter to avoid certain paths. A nightmare about conflict might prepare him for real tensions within the group. Though unpleasant, nightmares were survival tools, training the brain for danger when it mattered most. As the night stretches on, the hunter cycles through REM sleep several times, each dream slightly different. Some are vivid and emotional. Others diffuse and fragmented. The brain alternates between deep restoration and creative simulation. Each cycle strengthens memory and emotional balance. By morning, the hunter will wake more resilient, clearer in thought, and ready for the challenges of the day. Across the sleeping tribe, dozens of minds experience their own dream worlds. A mother dreams of her child wandering too far from the fire. A child dreams of running with animals. An elder dreams of seasons past. Their dreams intertwine with their waking lives, influencing decisions, moods, and relationships. Dreams become a shared mystery, later discussed at dawn or interpreted privately. As the first light of morning filters through the trees, the hunter begins to surface from sleep. His brain slows its dreaming activity. Muscles regain control. Consciousness returns gradually, pulling him back from the surreal world of the night. He does not recall every dream, only fragments, the colors of the sky, the voice of the elder, the rush of running. But the impact of the dreams lingers. His mind feels lighter, his emotions steadier, his senses refreshed. To early humans, dreams were enchanting but confusing. They didn't understand the neural mechanisms behind them. But they sensed their power. They saw dreams as visions, messages, or journeys. And though they could not explain them scientifically, they recognized something important: dreaming made them better prepared for life. The deep night was not empty. It was alive, alive with stories, fears, lessons, and possibilities. Inside the dreaming brain, early humans rehearsed survival, explored creativity, processed emotions, and expanded the boundaries of consciousness. Dreams were nature's way of ensuring that even while the body slept, the mind continued to evolve. Throughout Earth's ancient history, there were moments when the world plunged into darkness far deeper than any night early humans had ever known. Cataclysmic events, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts, shifting climates, and ice ages, reshaped the planet's ecosystems, forcing every living creature to adapt or vanish. In these periods of environmental collapse, sleep itself evolved. The rhythms of rest changed. The strategies of survival altered. And humanity's ancestors, along with countless other species, learned new ways to endure when the world grew hostile, cold, and unpredictable. Imagine the aftermath of a massive volcanic eruption tens of thousands of years ago. Ash fills the sky, blocking sunlight for weeks or months. Days become dim, gray, and cold. Nights stretch endlessly. Animals struggle to find warmth. Plants die. Food becomes scarce. The human ancestors living through such times faced a terrifying reality: the normal cycles of day and night, warmth and cold, abundance and scarcity, were shattered. In this new world, sleep had to adapt. Darkness now lasted longer. With low light, early humans felt constant sleepiness, yet sleeping too much could lead to vulnerability. The tribe had to adjust their rhythms based on survival rather than sunlight. People rested in shorter bursts. Some slept during odd hours. Others stayed awake longer through the dark days. Sleep became staggered, unpredictable, and shared among the group. This disorder was not a flaw, it was a necessity. Other species adapted even more dramatically. Some mammals entered states similar to hibernation, long periods of deep, minimal activity designed to conserve energy. In cold climates, ancestors of modern bears and ground squirrels slept through months of winter, their bodies slowing to an astonishing degree. Their hearts beat sluggishly, their breathing nearly stopped, and yet they survived because their rest patterns conserved more energy than waking life ever could. Early humans, lacking such extreme biological abilities, developed behavioral adaptations instead. They insulated their shelters with thicker furs, built deeper hearths, and huddled closer together at night to retain body heat. These behaviors shaped new sleeping patterns. Humans slept in denser groups. They shared warmth more intensely. They took turns sleeping and tending fire, ensuring that the flame, the only source of comfort in a freezing world, never went out. As ice ages advanced and retreated, humans migrated. New environments demanded new rhythms. In northern regions where winter nights lasted up to 20 hours, tribes developed extended rest cycles. They slept longer and more frequently, not from luxury but from necessity. Cold drains energy rapidly. Rest protected the body. Meanwhile, groups near the equator experienced less dramatic seasonal shifts, allowing them to maintain more stable patterns. These differences across regions eventually shaped variations in sleep tendencies between human populations. During long winters, the earliest hints of seasonal affective behaviors appeared. Darkness affected mood. Reduced sunlight disrupted hormonal rhythms. Melatonin levels rose earlier and stayed elevated longer, creating extended periods of drowsiness. But early humans learned to manage these effects through ritual, firelight, and communal bonding. Social closeness became a buffer against environmental stress. Other extinction-level threats pressured sleep in different ways. During droughts, predators became bolder, entering human territories more often in desperate search of food. Sleep became lighter, more fragmented. Nightwatchers became even more crucial. Their vigilance saved groups from starving predators and scavengers. The harsher the world became, the more human survival depended on shared sleep systems and coordinated rest. Even mass extinctions long before humans existed shaped the sleep strategies inherited by early mammals. The asteroid impact that ended the age of dinosaurs plunged the world into years of darkness and cold. The mammals that survived were mostly small, nocturnal, and capable of flexible rest patterns. Their ability to adapt their sleep, to hide in burrows, conserve energy, and shift activity cycles, allowed them to survive when reptiles and giant predators perished. These survival traits were passed down through millions of generations, eventually reaching humans. In another era, during sudden climate shifts, floods, or severe storms, early human groups took refuge in caves and narrow shelters, where sleep patterns became tightly controlled by the environment. The sound of wind or rushing water became constant reminders of danger. Humans learned to fall asleep quickly when conditions were calm and wake instantly when danger approached. This ability, to drop into rest and return to alertness rapidly, became one of the human brain's unique strengths. Some prehistoric groups experienced periods where the world grew unbearably hot, forcing them to sleep during the scorching daytime and stay active at night. The reversal of circadian rhythms in these regions was not biological error but survival wisdom. Humans adapted their activity to the world's new shape. Their internal clocks shifted. New patterns emerged. These early experiments with flexible sleep spread through human populations, strengthening the species' overall adaptability. And with every challenge, sleep evolved, not always biologically, but behaviorally. Humans created new rules: choose higher ground during floods. Sleep in tight circles for warmth. Rotate watchers when predators roam. Sleep lightly during storms. Conserve energy when food is scarce. Sleep deeper when safety allows. These strategies were the invisible architecture of survival. The darkest periods of Earth's history taught humans something profound: sleep was not simply a passive state but an active tool. A strategic choice. A response to crisis. It could be stretched, shortened, fragmented, or deepened as the world demanded. When the environment collapsed, sleep patterns changed with it. And through those changes, humans endured. Extinction events carved humanity's resilience into its biology. The rhythms of rest and wakefulness learned during the world's hardest times became part of human instinct, shaping how modern humans respond to stress, danger, seasons, and uncertainty. Even today, echoes of ancient catastrophes can be found in human sleep: why some people sleep lightly. Why others fall asleep instantly. Why winter deepens fatigue. Why the brain wakes at sudden noises. Why the mind restores itself only through rest. These traits are not modern quirks, they are the inheritance of ancestors who survived the darkest moments Earth ever faced. When the world was darkest, sleep became the lifeline of life. And through adapting to crisis, humans learned that rest is not weakness, it is evolution's greatest strategy. The ancient world shaped human sleep through firelight, predators, shared shelters, and the rhythms of nature. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans evolved in harmony with darkness, following the rise and fall of the sun. But as civilizations advanced, as technology illuminated the night and reshaped daily life, the delicate balance between humans and their ancestral sleep patterns began to fracture. What once protected humanity, light, vigilance, awareness, now wages a quiet war against the very rest humans desperately need. The Nightwatchers of prehistory have transformed into the insomniacs of the modern age. Imagine the prehistoric human who stayed awake at night. Their alertness was a gift. Their sharp hearing and quick reactions protected their tribe. Their genes passed down through generations, embedding a natural variance in sleep patterns within humanity. Today, those same traits persist, but without predators, without the need to guard firelight, without the rhythmic pulses of danger guiding nightly habits. Instead of guarding against threats, many modern humans guard against thoughts, their minds racing long after their bodies beg for rest. Artificial light, once humanity's salvation, became one of the greatest disruptors of sleep. Firelight was warm, reddish, gentle, similar to sunset. But the bright white and blue lights of modern cities mimic daylight, tricking the brain into delaying melatonin production. The body believes it is still early evening, even when night has long fallen. The ancient circadian cues that guided humanity for millennia fall out of sync. People stay awake later. They wake too early. They sleep lightly, never fully sinking into the deep, restorative phases their ancestors depended on. In prehistoric times, darkness signaled safety, rest, the end of activity. Now, darkness is almost entirely erased. Cities glow relentlessly. Screens illuminate bedrooms. Nighttime is no longer a barrier, it is an extension of productivity. Yet human biology has not adapted nearly as fast as technology. The internal clock remains tuned to the world of firelight and predators, not neon signs and smartphones. The result is widespread insomnia, a modern shadow of the Nightwatchers' ancient vigilance. But insomnia has deeper roots than technology. The emotional pressures of modern life, stress, anxiety, overstimulation, activate the same neural pathways once triggered by danger in the dark. When early humans slept lightly, it was because a lion might be near. Today, the lion is worry, work deadlines, financial strain, relationship tension, overwhelming information. The brain reacts to modern stress like it did to ancient predators. It stays alert. It refuses to shut down. It protects the sleeper from imagined danger just as fiercely as from real threats. This ancient survival mechanism collides with modern emotional burdens, trapping people in restless nights. The result, millions lying awake, staring at ceilings, trapped in minds they cannot silence. Even sleep architecture has shifted. Prehistoric humans slept in group circles, hearing the quiet breaths of family and companions. This closeness created safety signals that allowed deep sleep. Modern humans often sleep alone, in silent rooms far removed from the comforting rhythm of others. Loneliness disrupts relaxation. The brain, evolved for communal sleeping, remains half alert in isolation. For some, silence is not soothing, it is unsettling. The Nightwatcher instinct awakens, scanning the quiet for threats that no longer exist. Noise, ironically, can also disturb modern rest. Traffic hums, sirens scream, neighbors move, devices beep. The human brain, wired to detect danger through sound, reacts instantly. A distant noise may not be a predator, but the brain responds as if it could be. Light sleepers, once the guardians of the tribe, now struggle because their genetics remain tuned for vigilance, not convenience. Modern work schedules further strain sleep. Early humans woke with sunrise and slept shortly after sunset. Their bodies followed the natural world. Today, people work night shifts, rotating schedules, or long hours under artificial light. Many stay up late to finish tasks or scroll through screens. These habits disrupt the very cycles that maintain psychological and physical health. Sleep debts accumulate, weakening immune systems, fogging minds, and destabilizing emotions. Ironically, some modern humans even romanticize sleeplessness, associating it with productivity, ambition, or creativity. But the truth is simple: chronic lack of sleep erodes the very cognitive abilities people admire: focus, memory, emotional balance, and innovation. Yet not all modern experiences of night are negative. In quiet moments before dawn, some individuals, those descended from ancient Nightwatchers, still feel a natural peace. Night remains a time for reflection, solitude, or creativity. Writers, thinkers, and artists often find clarity in darkness, their minds wired for late-night wakefulness. They are not broken, they are echoes of an ancient strategy. Their biology is not maladaptive, it is misplaced. Still, the modern world poses unprecedented challenges. Light pollution, emotional stress, and fragmented schedules have collectively weakened humanity's relationship with sleep. What once protected humans, awareness in darkness, now harms them when triggered at the wrong time. The instincts that allowed ancestors to survive have become sources of struggle for their descendants. But understanding this connection may help restore balance. Humans do not need to fight their ancient rhythms, they need to work with them. Darkness is not the enemy, nor is light. The real challenge is remembering that the body still belongs to a world shaped by firelight, predators, and communal rest. To heal the modern relationship with sleep, humans must reconnect with aspects of that prehistoric world, reducing harsh night light, honoring natural rhythms, creating comforting sleep environments, and embracing rituals that calm the mind before rest. Just as early humans prepared their sleeping circles, modern humans must prepare their minds and environments. The Nightwatchers of the past kept humanity alive. But their instincts, carried into the modern age, need guidance, not suppression. The war against the dark is not fought outside, it is fought inside the mind. And to end that war, modern humans must rediscover what their ancestors once knew: sleep is not a weakness to overcome, but the foundation upon which every strength depends. In the beginning, there was darkness, vast, unforgiving, and absolute. Early humans trembled beneath it, their lives shaped by the nightly struggle to survive while half the world slept and the other half hunted. Yet through thousands of generations, that same darkness became something else, something gentler. Not because the world changed, but because humans did. They adapted. They learned. And slowly, sleep transformed from a dangerous surrender into a sacred rhythm, a bridge between survival and consciousness. Now imagine the final moments of an ancient night. A small fire flickers, reduced to glowing embers. Around it, a circle of humans sleeps in peaceful quiet. The Nightwatcher, the last sentinel before dawn, sits awake, listening to the fading growls of distant predators. Their eyes reflect both the darkness outside and the warmth within. Soon, the sky will lighten. Soon, others will wake. The tribe has survived another night. This simple scene, one repeated for countless millennia, holds the secret purpose of sleep. As the Nightwatcher gazes at the horizon, they are not just guarding bodies. They are guarding minds. Because sleep, as humans now understand, is not merely a pause in the day's struggles, it is the foundation of every thought, every memory, every dream, and every connection that makes humanity what it is. Sleep carried our ancestors through freezing winters, scorching droughts, predator-filled nights, and world-changing catastrophes. It shaped their brains, sharpened their instincts, healed their bodies, and expanded their inner worlds. Without it, humans would never have developed imagination, creativity, or self-awareness. Dreams gave birth to stories, stories gave birth to culture, and culture gave birth to meaning. Even now, in the modern world, where darkness has been nearly erased and danger feels distant, sleep remains the invisible architect of human life. We know more about it scientifically than any generation before us, yet it still holds mysteries, still feels like stepping into an ancient place, untouched by time. If we return to that ancient fire for a moment, we can see how everything fits together. The predators watching from the shadows forced humans to sleep in groups and rely on one another. The division of labor in darkness created Nightwatchers, who kept fire alive and danger at bay. The rise of shelters allowed humans deeper, safer rest that transformed their cognitive abilities. Dreams strengthened emotional resilience, creativity, and symbolic thinking. Circadian rhythms guided humans through seasons, migrations, and climate shifts. Evolution balanced vulnerability with brilliance, gifting humans a brain that required nightly renewal. And so the Nightwatcher at the fire's edge is more than a guardian, they are part of a design that shaped humanity itself. As the first glow of dawn brushes across the landscape, the Nightwatcher finally feels the weight of sleep pressing upon them. Their duty ends. Another awakens, stretching, blinking, taking in the pale light of morning. The cycle continues, not just of sleep and wakefulness, but of trust. Trust in each other. Trust in the night. Trust in the ancient rhythms that guided humanity from fear to understanding. In this epilogue of the prehistoric world, as one day transitions into the next, we see the lesson clearly: sleep was never just about rest. It was about transformation. In darkness, the human mind learned to imagine new worlds. In dreams, it learned to solve problems beyond logic. In shared sleep, it learned cooperation and community. In Nightwatchers, it learned vigilance, empathy, and responsibility. In safe homes, it learned comfort and sanctuary. In extinction events, it learned adaptability and resilience. Every evolutionary pressure, danger, cold, hunger, fear, pushed sleep to become something more complex and powerful. And humans used that power to rise beyond instinct and become thinkers, creators, believers. Now, in the modern age, with its glaring artificial lights and endless noise, humanity often forgets this ancient truth. We forget that sleep is not an inconvenience, not a weakness, not an optional luxury. It is the oldest and most essential form of human renewal. The modern struggle against insomnia, stress, and disconnection is not a failure of biology, it is a reminder. A call to return, in spirit, to the firelight. Because the secret purpose of sleep is not merely to restore the body, but to restore the human being. The Nightwatcher stands now, stretching, feeling dawn's first warmth. They lay down beside the others, closing their eyes as the sun rises. In this simple reversal, night guards sleeping at dawn, the entire history of sleep is written. Without them, no tribe would have survived. Without sleep, no mind could have flourished. And though the world has changed beyond recognition, the ancestral rhythm remains. Every night is a return to the firelight, to safety, to the dreaming world that shaped us. Sleep is not an escape from life. It is the quiet engine that sustains it. In the soft glow of dawn, the tribe stirs, stretching, yawning, stepping into the new day with clearer minds and steadier hearts. They are alive because they slept. They are human because they dreamed. And as the night fades, the ancient truth remains. We rise each morning not in spite of sleep, but because of it.